Dealing with the condition itself is not enough.
Dear Mr. Massa, I'm just trying to mind my own business. What's the matter? It's just another day, another black king captured. I'm about to lose my brain, stuck inside this ghetto rapture. I got a lot of smoke. If you want it, you can have it. They want a hat trick, but this is black girl magic. Ain't talking about the kind that'll make you disappear, but I'm talking about the power of the melanin within. Ain't looking for trouble, but I'ma say this one time. I put 2 dukes up if you try to touch mine. We still want justice for Samir and Trayvon. You say you don't see color, but racism ain't blind. They targeting little kids whose skin look just like mine. So I'm paranoid, it's a war zone outside. And I'm a black queen, so if you ask me to step out of my car, you gon' have to snatch me. Cause I ain't going no damn well. Had to spend my whole life living unfair. Ancestors got my back and they right here. You can never understand, it's a nightmare. Living in my black shoes by the black rules. You can keep your handshake, I don't dap coons. The white man will go nuts if he cash you. But you all on his side like a damn fool. Make it make sense.
We are oppressed.
Queen.
We are exploited. We are downtrodden.
Make it make
Queen.
We are
sense.
denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation
Queen.
away from us or aside from us is come together
Queen.
against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your
Ahmadiyyah.
hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin?
Ahmadiyyah.
Parents, pay attention to the books, the school system, even to your little children. Lies mixed with wisdom. His skin too bright, so he was blind to the prison. My skin just right, so I collide with division. You trying to pray to God, but we tired of religion. No savior saving, we got to save our savings. We used to pay miss, how we gon' make the slave rich? But who's to blame, and tell me why you complaining? We need a team effort just to rule the nation. Like a bad relationship, missing communication. We missing moderation. They're trying to get a poison to my population. No reparations. I'm getting tired of Satan.
We are oppressed.
I'm
Queen.
getting tired of waiting.
We are downtrodden.
Queen.
We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation.
Queen.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to the original Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, and this is your morning wake-up call. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, be sure to click that notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, and listen, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr._A_Shakur, Twitter at DGoddess27, and as per usual, if you don't like the Queen is cooking, you already know what to do. All right, hello, D Major, Pearly, kicking it with Auntie Leah is here, Claudette, Most Hated, Bronze Flat Power God, Panther Strike, Jeff ATL. All right, let's get into it, Cookie, Aqua Girl Rising. All right, I see you, Claudette. So everyone hit that like button. We're going to talk about y'all's president this morning. All right, Trump. And let me just go over some of the things we're going to talk about in case I happen to forget something. Hopefully, the moderators can remind me. Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about the trade war escalating and what China's president has to say. Also, tech analysts are saying that Trump wants Apple to start making their iPhones in the U.S. Not going to happen, okay, because they get cheap labor from China. Next is the Supreme Court has instructed Trump, his administration, to bring back that man, okay? That man that they foolishly sent to El Salvador, that was a whole citizen. He was here legally, okay? So they've been instructed to bring him back. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump and all of them are facing insider trading. We're going to talk about that. But most importantly, we're going to talk about the Central Park Five and their defamation lawsuit against the nefarious Trump. He tried to get rid of it, tried to get it dismissed, but the judge said, no, sir. Okay, the judge said, no, Trump, I'm not kissing your butt. You're going to face the music. And I have the law docs for that. Okay, so we're going to get into it. All right, so if I leave out anything, please don't have a problem reminding me. Okay, hey, just anticipate. Now, with that all been said, let's have a brief word from my sponsor at 12 Tribes.
Do not buy 12 Tribes on Earth hair growth oil and hair magic elixir unless you want super healthy, gorgeous hair that grows. They have a whole line of amazing hair growth products, including hair growth leave-in conditioner spray, hair growth shampoo, hair growth spray, and hair growth butter. I'm starting to sense a theme here. They include quality natural ingredients. They smell amazing, and you can see the results for yourself. So if you're looking for healthy hair growth for your natural or relaxed hair, try 12 Tribes on Earth today.
Okay, so don't forget you can purchase 12 Tribes oil for your hair at Etsy.com. Just look for Lisa Crafts, and you can also find it at Walmart.com. Okay, and so with that all being said, let's get into it. So where shall we start? Let's talk about Trump's plan. No, let's talk about him acknowledging transition problems with the tariffs. Okay, let's go to that clip. Likes up, everyone. Please don't forget to like and share. Also, double check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel, especially if you haven't been receiving your notifications.
Washington tonight on America Decides. It takes a village of volatility, or so it seems. Stocks tumble yet again. President Trump holds a cabinet meeting today as tariff reality that it can be discerned sets in. Stock market slides, all three major indices closing in the red, even as the White House says dozens of countries are apparently coming to the table to talk tariffs. And yet, trade tensions with China, they're only increasing. President Trump's reciprocal tariffs on the world's second largest economy now total 145%, though there are some exemptions. Beijing's retaliatory tariffs are also now in effect to the tune of about 84%. Today, President Trump acknowledged there will be what he calls transition problems.
We're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
I want to start tonight with Willie James Inman at the White House. Kelly O'Grady, my good friend in New York. Kelly, let me start with you because we've been doing this for so many days. And the volatility today was kind of remarkable, almost as remarkable as yesterday's were in the upward direction. At the one point today, the Dow was down, if I remember correctly, 2,100 points, closed about 1,000 points down. That seems to be a market still trying to wrestle with what all of this means.
That's right, Major. And I think you're going to see that market and the investors wrestle with this for a while. I will give you another stat to just put into context how volatile it was. At one point, the S&P 500 was down just about 6%. And that's important because when you hit 7%, it's called a circuit breaker, and trading across the indexes are halted for 15 minutes. So we got really close to that today. But what you're seeing, yesterday was a bit of a sugar high. I talked to a bunch of investors, and every single one of them told me they did not think that we had seen the bottom in the market, that there's still so much back and forth, and that today people were coming to terms, I think you said it right off the top, with the tariff reality, that we still have a 10% tariff on most nations. That's not nothing. And this trade war that seems to be developing with China is giving a lot of investors anxiety. What we saw happen with the bond market and the 10-year Treasury, also a lot of anxiety as investors just wonder, is the dollar going to remain strong? Is the economy going to remain strong?
Kelly, stand by. I want to talk to Willie on the North Lawn of the White House. What is the White House saying today about the future of these tariff talks?
Hey there, Major. Well, the president was asked about this earlier today. What happens in 90 days? And he essentially said that those tariffs would go back into place if the United States doesn't get what it wants in terms of those negotiations with their trading partners and nations around the world. Of course, let's remember that those retaliatory tariffs, some 125%, you add the 20% fentanyl tariffs, that brings it to 145% for those some of those goods coming from China. But the White House saying that they're negotiating here. Peter Navarro, the White House trade advisor, essentially says that this 90-day time period buys time for the U.S., including President Trump, to negotiate. And advisors indicated earlier today that Trump would be personally involved with those negotiations, especially when it comes to China.
Kelly, there's a conversation going on here in Washington. Some of it has a political aspect to it, but there is some of it that's going on in Wall Street that's just looking at the timeline of yesterday. Because the president's announcement was preceded, about the pause, was preceded by a very sharp increase in stock buying. Walk us through what the timeline suggests or tells us.
Right. So the timeline is really all about the question of when President Trump put out this post that essentially said, I believe it was 9:37 exactly, it's a good time to buy. It's a good time to get in. And then a couple of hours later, not even 4, in the 1 o'clock hour was when he announced this 90-day pause. And so the accusation is that this may have been what we call market manipulation. So trying to get investors to respond in a specific way. Oftentimes you see it with a particular stock. Elon Musk has been accused of this in the past with Tesla. I will say I've talked to a few investors and analysts and folks at the SEC about this, or that were formerly at the SEC. They say he's been saying that the markets are okay for a while, even over the past week and a half, that it wasn't necessarily a change in tone, but a lot of people are suggesting it was, Major.
Willie, I want to play for you some sound from the top economic advisor of the White House, Kevin Hassett. Let's play that.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and
I don't think that I ever give stock advice about now, but I think every day is a good day to buy if you believe in the future of America, and every day is a good day to hold.
So, Willie, that's sort of a redirection of the question, not really going to the substance, which is, did anyone in the White House know this was going to happen? And did any of that information leak out in ways that could influence the way people purchased or made decisions on the stock market?
Yeah, that's the question here, Major. But the White House is trying to explain away this situation. Not only that sound you played there coming from the president's top economic advisor, but also a spokesperson gave us a statement, and he reiterated that the president is looking to reassure Americans in the economy. I want to read part of that statement for our viewers. He says, "It is the responsibility of the president of the United States to reassure the markets and Americans about their economic security in the face of nonstop media fear-mongering." And then that statement goes on to criticize Democrats. So the White House looking to not necessarily address the situation, but also sidestep it in a way that really doesn't explain what the president potentially did there or the situation itself, Major.
Kelly, that phrase has come up a lot in the last 24 hours from the White House, media fear-mongering. So let's take you out of it. Let's take me out of it. What has happened on the indices the year to date? They're all down. And they're down because it seems to me those who are making market decisions are on the net down, or at least buying the down and not buying the up.
Well, and it's interesting, actually. I'm glad that you put that into context of what's happened year to date, because let's just take the last week out of it. Prior to that, you look at the indices around the world that we track in Asia and Europe, and those markets were actually doing much better than the U.S. And I will highlight that there are a number of major banks, which, by the way, we're going to start see reporting tomorrow. That's going to be an important moment for the market, that have talked about a slowdown in economic growth. So taking you and me out of it, it's not just the fear mongering. It is that we are hearing this from some of these major business leaders as well, that they're concerned.
And Kelly, again, taking you out of it, taking me out of it, there was very positive inflation news today that under normal circumstances, outside of this tariff conversation and the anxiety therein, probably would have sent the market in a more positive direction.
I am so glad you brought that up, Major, because I saw this morning and I was like, wow, we're going to have a great day in the markets. You're right. Normally, the fact that we saw 2.8% the month before, inflation went down to 2.4%, you would have seen investors celebrate, but they're not looking backwards, they're looking forwards. And what if and what might happen with tariffs?
Kelly O'Grady in New York, my thanks to you. Willie James Inman at the White House, thanks to you.
Okay. Now, what I know is that we can't believe anything that Trump seems to say. Okay, please pay attention. We already know that much. But so let's talk about it. Because I, quite frankly, have several questions. So, Trump ignites insider trading accusations after global tariffs U-turn. So Donald Trump is facing accusations of market manipulation after posting on social media that it was a great time to buy, just hours before he made a dramatic U-turn on his trade war. Okay, that led to big rises in stock markets around the world. So, see, Trump is so stupid. Trump is so foolish. He doesn't know that there are certain things he needs to keep his mouth shut about. Okay? And not only is he stupid, his cabinet is stupid. Okay? That's why they thought that the things that were leaked in that chat leak, that's why they thought they could put that stuff in there, because that's just how dumb they all are as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so anyway, shortly after U.S. markets opened on Wednesday morning, Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social, "This is a great time to buy," and then put his initials. How is that not insider trading? When you give people clues and hints and tips to tell them when or when not to purchase stocks. Anyway, less than 4 hours later, he shocked investors by announcing a 90-day pause on additional trade tariffs on most countries except China, sending share indexes soaring. Now, in America, the S&P 500 Blue Chip Index closed up by more than 9%, while the technology-focused NASDAQ Index shut more than 12% up. Stocks continued to rise in Asia and Europe on Thursday, with Japan's Nikkei 225 index up by 9% and London's FTSE 100 index rising by as much as 4% in early trading. So Trump does not usually sign off his post with his initials. Okay, those letters happen to be the same as the ticker for Trump Media and Technology Group, the business that controls Truth Social, whose stock shot up by 22% on Wednesday. Now, why did he put his initials on there? The timing of the U.S. president's post and subsequent huge share jumps it has sparked accusations of market manipulation. Now, the Democratic Senator Adam Schiff has called for an investigation, saying that these constant gyrations in policy provide dangerous opportunities for insider trading. Who in the administration knew that Trump's latest tariff flip-flop, who knew about it ahead of time? Okay, did anyone buy or sell stocks and profit at the public's expense? I'm writing to the White House. The public has a right to know, because here's the thing. I'm sure they did. How would they not? And then he said, who knew about it before time? Yeah, all of the people close to Trump. I bet you his billionaire friends probably knew about it too. But at the very least, he knew about it, okay? And all of the people in his inner circle. All right, please pay attention. Elon and all the rest. Now, goes on to say the Democratic Senator Chris Murphy also wrote on X that an insider trading scandal is brewing. Trump's 9:30 a.m. tweet makes it clear that he was eager for his people to make money off the private info that only he knew. Didn't I tell you his billionaire buddies, okay, and his inner circle? So who knew ahead of time, and how much money did they make? Because I'll bet you their pockets are fat, okay? And I bet Elon was right there for it, because he's already lost $135 billion, and he was very upset about it, all right? So anyway, this is all a mess. Now, the New York Democrat, Trump's a criminal. What do they expect? Do they think that because they put him back in the White House, he's going to stop his criminality? Well, I don't think so. Now, but that all being said, the New York Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called for all members of Congress to disclose any stocks they had bought in the past 24 hours. Yeah, I want to see this. This is what we need to know, because that way they can find out who bought the stocks because of what Trump said, okay? Because that would be very suspicious and more than coincidental if they bought some within the 24-hour time frame. Now, I've been hearing some interesting chatter on the floor. This is what she wrote on X. Disclosure deadline is May 15th. Now, we're about to learn a few things. It's time to ban insider trading in Congress. See, that's the thing. Insider trading is illegal, but there has long been rumors of Congress engaging in it, okay? But they put Martha Stewart in prison for it. All right, they should, too, go to prison if they're engaged in it, as far as I'm concerned. Now, when asked by U.S. reporters on Wednesday evening when exactly he arrived at this decision to pause tariffs on most countries for 90 days, Trump said, for a period of time. I would say this morning. Over the last few days, I've been thinking about it. Okay, anyway, however, White House officials have argued the shift was part of the strategy all along, with his press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, arguing that it was his part of the deal at work. Now, several investors have used volatility in the stock market in recent weeks as a buying opportunity. The U.S. Representative for Georgia, Republican and Trump ally Marjorie Taylor Greene, disclosed that she had made several purchases, on the third and fourth days of April. All right, when there were sharp market falls after Trump first detailed his Liberation Day tariffs on April the 2nd, including shares in Amazon.com and Apple. Now, shares in the technology companies rose by 12% and 15% respectively on that Wednesday. While Trump has paused many of the new country-specific tariffs, he has maintained pressure on China, the second biggest economy in the world. Now, he increased the tariff on Chinese imports to 125% from 104% level that started on Wednesday. Beijing could respond again after hitting U.S. imports with 85% tariffs that began on Thursday. Honey, Trump is out here just doing all kind of shady stuff that is absolutely illegal and clearly nefarious, okay? Now, is he going to have consequences? Probably not. All right, probably not. Like Greta said, crooks will be crooks, but this is what the American public voted for. Time for them to pay the piper for their poor choices. Honey, you said it right. Okay, you said it right. Honey, they need to sit down somewhere. Okay, don't cry now. This is what they asked for. Okay, Greta said, Queen spin facts all day long. She is spot on in her commentary on this insider trading. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. Honey, Trump thinks he is so slick. And pay attention to how the news reporter kept saying that they continue to say fear-mongering. Okay, those are the key words and talking points that Trump uses when he's accused of something or they've done something incompetent. Okay, he'll say, oh, it's a witch hunt. All right. Oh, this is more democratic fear mongering, like as if people are just making up things to attack them with. Okay, rather than addressing the issue at hand, because that's his way of deflecting and gaslighting the American public. I want you all to pay attention. Now, this is all so nefarious. At the end of the day, Trump probably had this planned all along from day one. And who knows if Elon put him up to it, okay? Because we know Trump isn't that smart. All right, so I find it all interesting. Now, let's go to what China is up to. Everybody, please hit that like button. Thank you in advance. It's all a hot mess. Okay, so why China's Xi Jinping is playing hardball with Trump on tariffs. Now, this is a full analysis. So the Chinese president wants to show his people that the country can withstand the economic pain from President Donald Trump's tariffs and stand up to what Beijing is calling America's bullying. Now, this is according to experts. Trump's trade war also feeds into the strategy that Xi has been working on, that he's been working on for years, becoming less reliant on the United States. So this breakdown in trade is exactly what Beijing has been preparing for. Okay, this is what Jude Blanchett, director of the RAND China Research Center, said, saying that Beijing is not looking for negotiation. Okay, the world superpowers are engaged in a risky game of chicken. Okay, does anybody know what chicken is? Any of you are from the country, y'all know what chicken is, right? That's where back in the country they would get on these tractors, and then drive towards each other, and they'd have their shoelaces. Oh no, I'm sorry. They wouldn't have their shoelaces. That's just what Kevin Bacon did in the movie. But they would get on their tractors and drive towards each other. And then the first one that, gives up, gets scared that they're going to collide and turns in the other direction. That's the one that's chicken. Now, if you remember the movie with Kevin Bacon, Footloose, when he was doing that, his friend had tied his shoelace, to the gas pedal, so he couldn't stop. Okay, please pay attention. So this is what Trump is basically doing with China. All right, and he's turning our own allies against us. This is how foolish this man is. So Greta says, con man turned president, not realtor. He failed at that. I mean, we have a 34-time convicted felon, so what do we expect, right? So anyway, they go on to say that at the moment, Xi seems to be calculating that China can withstand the damage and that ultimately in the United States, who will blink first? Okay, a fellow for Chinese politics at the Asian Society Policy Institute's Center for China Analysis said that Xi's view is that countries will want to do business less with the United States because of its uncertainty created by tariffs. Now, this is all true, and I believe I told you all this the other day, or maybe I was having a conversation with one of my friends. But that's exactly what I was saying, as that other nations are not even going to trust the United States because Trump is just so unpredictable and just does such asinine things. And then when questioned about it, he is just so arrogant in his responses and acts like he knows better than anybody. Okay, but it was only, remember, that his billionaire friends turned on him. All right, and then Elon said out loud that it wasn't a good idea, that he wanted to walk it back and then issue the 90-day pause. All right, on these tariffs. Now, they say he's created this uncertainty by tariffs, which will drive them toward China. Okay, so this is what China's hoping for. Okay, who added that China, now Thomas added that China has been preparing for this possibility for years by growing trade relations with the rest of the world. Okay, so they're already like 2 steps ahead, because this is something they've already been hoping for. So Trump's just an idiot. He's feeding right into their plan. Okay, please pay attention. And that's why they're not pressed. Okay, both Washington and Beijing think they hold a stronger hand for different reasons. The Trump administration sees China as export dependent. So they believe it's significant leverage to get the Chinese to bend. Now, on the other hand, Beijing sees the U.S. as increasingly economically weak under Trump and distance from its allies. Who do you think sounds more correct and adequate or accurate? Well, China. Okay, that is what's going on right here. Okay, we are seen as increasingly economically weak under Trump. All right, and distance from our allies, because didn't I literally just say that he's turned our allies against us? So now, while Trump in his cabinet meeting on Thursday called Xi a friend and said he'd love to strike a deal with China, the calculus isn't so simple for Xi. Xi walks away from the phone call without a deal, and he risks losing face. Now, for Xi, there's a huge amount of risk for looking weak in his dealings with the United States. He risks being humiliated or not having anything to show for his engagement with Trump, according to Thomas. And Thomas says the tariffs will be economically painful, but Xi also sees this as an opportunity to get China into a healthier situation by reducing reliance on the United States. So there are also other levers that China can pull to retaliate too. Experts say that Beijing can ban more companies from doing business in China and then further limit exports of critical materials such as rare earth minerals. Okay, then what's the U.S. going to do? Now, China hasn't gone anywhere close to the maximum that it could do with its rare earth exports, considering it's such a dominant player within the industry. China could literally shut down huge segments of high-tech supply chains by banning rare earth minerals, Thomas says, calling it a nuclear option that would severely damage not just American economy, but European and Asian economies as well. Okay, so this is why they were referring to this whole thing the other day as a nuclear trade war. Now, Beijing has also said that it will restrict Hollywood films in China. While it's not a significant retaliation, Thomas says that it feeds right into Xi Jinping's broader political agenda to reduce foreign influence on Chinese society. Now, but Scott Kenny, senior advisor and trustee chair in Chinese business and economics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, argued that Beijing believes Trump has already blinked by pausing the reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. So they're saying Trump has already called chicken because he's already walked it back. He's already gone ahead and called it, paused it for 90 days. So he already knows that he's effed up. Just like I told you all days ago. He says, I think the Chinese will read this as a weakness from President Trump, and they're just going to wait. That's exactly what they're going to do, because it is weakness, because Trump realized that he effed up, and then he walked it on back. Okay, he walked it on back. Please pay attention. To Love Myself 100 said, J.D. Vance called the Chinese peasants call them peasants. He is a racist idiot. Yes, he did call them that. And that was so stupid because, like I said, the U.S. has borrowed money from China, owes money to China. And then, and even in the context of how he said they were peasants, he said we borrow money from Chinese peasants and then to buy products from Chinese peasants. So you're borrowing money from people that you're calling peasants? Like, make that make sense. Okay, it's just all so ridiculous at the end of the day. But this is y'all's president. And I was laughing the other day because Tasha K was talking about Trump's, and shout out to Tasha K. I was laughing because Tasha K was talking about Trump and these tariffs the other day and the Chinese. And she was talking about how they come to our communities and open up these hair salons, nail salons, and all that stuff or whatever. That is not the Chinese. And I was thinking to myself, Tasha, you got your Asians confused. Okay, because the ones that open up the hair salons, or I'm sorry, the nail salons, okay, those are Vietnamese. All right, the ones with the beauty supply stores are Koreans. All right, as well as the ones that have the liquor stores. Okay, Chinese people tend to open up restaurants. All right, for the most part. Okay, so anyway, with that all being said, let's talk about Trump's plan for undocumented farm and hotel workers to legally work in the United States. Okay, but he's supposed to be so against immigration and, carrying out mass deportations. See, Trump's just all over the place. He says one thing and does another. He is absolutely unpredictable, and that is why he makes America look weak under his leadership, not to mention the decline in the economy and the stocks and all of that. Now him being accused of insider trading with his dumb self, okay, and just a myriad of foolishness and things that he's done. Specifically that chat leak, okay? Let's not forget about that because that was really detrimental, in my opinion. I mean, military officials could actually have been killed thanks to their foolishness, okay? And he wants to downplay it and call it a witch hunt. Trump floats plan for undocumented farm and hotel workers to work legally in the United States. Now, the president's comments suggested a vague plan that would allow the government to bring great people, bring them back who are fighting or who are working hard and who go out in a nice way. So he suggested at a cabinet meeting on Thursday that undocumented people working on farms and in hotels would be allowed to leave the country and return as legal workers if their employers vouched for them. So now the employers just have to vouch for them? Okay. Now, Trump said at the meeting with reporters present that we have to take care of our farmers, the hotels, and the various places where they tend to need people. So a farmer will come in with a letter concerning certain people saying they're great, they're working hard. We're going to slow it down a little bit for them. And then we're going to ultimately bring them back. They'll go out, they're going to come back as legal workers. Trump is so ridiculous. Now, it was unclear what he meant by slow it down a little bit for them. Exactly. All right. The administration has been pouring resources into arresting, detaining, and deporting undocumented immigrants to fulfill Trump's campaign pledge to conduct a history-making mass deportation of immigrants from the United States. Now, Trump said the administration is going to work with people if they go out in a nice way. We're going to work with them right from the beginning on, trying to get them back in legally. So it gives you real incentive. Otherwise, they never come back. They'll never be allowed once a certain period of time goes by, which is probably going to be 60 days. Now, in response to an NBC News request for more details, White House spokesman Kush Desai said Trump's administration is committed to delivering on the mandate that the American people gave to Trump with a whole of government approach to secure our borders, enforce immigration laws, mass deport criminal illegal migrants, and put America first. The United States has programs that allow immigrants to come to the country and work, although employers often complain about the difficulties of using them. Farm worker and immigrant advocates have often pushed for better regulation of the programs to ensure workers are not exploited or abused or thrust into a substandard living or work conditions. Now, a White House official told NBC News that Trump wants to improve the H-2A program through which employers in the agricultural industry can hire temporary and seasonal workers, and the H-2B program for hiring immigrant workers for temporary seasonal jobs in other industry sectors, such as hospitality and entertainment, and in the tourism industry. Trump has used the H-2B program before. So Trump spoke after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made statements about self-deportation and a Trump administration policy that requires people here illegally to register with the Department of Homeland Security using an app that it has dubbed CBP Home, or face criminal charges and fines. Now, a federal judge on Thursday allowed the registration requirement to move forward. About 40% of U.S. crop farm workers are undocumented. 40%? That's almost half. I did not know that it was such a high percentage. Now, about 1.1 million undocumented people in the hospitality industry, hotels and restaurants, about 7.6% of the workforce in 2023. And according to an analysis by the American Immigration Council, a legal group that advocates for the immigration, they put this information out there. Now, so the administration is estimated to have deported nearly 300 people last month, most of them originally from Venezuela, to a mega prison in El Salvador. Now, Trump has declared the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua an alien enemy, and he invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1789, a wartime law to deport people immigration officials designated as members of gangs. Allegations relatives of some of the relatives of the deported have contested. Now, they say immigration officers also have been arresting people at home, schools, and universities when they arrive for immigration check-ins, or if they're stopped for traffic violations. Can you imagine your child is at college and then they get arrested, for immigration purposes? So anyway, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, along with Texas officials, made several arrests in a Texas community where many homeowners are Latino. Okay, and this was in February, stopping some people as they headed to work. I said at the time that several of them had criminal backgrounds. Now, Trump has been under some pressure from industries whose workforces include undocumented workers. The pandemic showed that many essential workers were Latino, and that in some industries, many were undocumented and were not citizens. So American farmers also have been raising alarms about the effect Trump's policies or his tariffs policies and funding cuts to federally subsidized school lunch, as well as food banks and other such programs, will have on their livelihoods. So in March, business owners and leaders rallied in Washington and met with members of Congress as part of the American Business Immigration Coalition's Secure the Workforce campaign, which is aimed at continuing the flow of immigrant workers to the United States. Now, the group is pushing for legislation that includes, among other things, work permits for immigrant workers. So they say what we're seeing is President Trump beginning the negotiations of what a Trump-based immigration plan would look like. Now, this is what Artemio Munez, an attorney who employs workers through his manufacturing business and joined the coalition rallying meetings. He says he was not speaking on behalf of the American Business Immigration Coalition. He said that he and others supporting the coalition's campaign believe Trump has secured the border and that we now want to secure the undocumented workers because we don't want to lose them, because if we do, we see an increase in cost. I respect the fact that Trump is willing to initiate the discussion. Well, here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. Whether people like it or not, the truth of the matter is that immigrants, illegal or not, stimulate the economy. That's a fact. These illegal immigrants stimulate the economy, okay? And that's just a fact. So when Trump's talking about these mass deportations, I already told y'all months ago that that's not going to be good for the economy, and that's just what it is. Now, do the research yourself. Don't take my word. We have an escalating trade war. Okay, the economy's in the tank. Allies are turning against us. Who knows what China's going to do? because they're going to continue to retaliate. And the bottom line is now Trump wants iPhones to be made in the United States. What is he even thinking? And, a tech analyst responded to this saying, I don't think that's a thing. Okay, because clearly it makes no sense. So President Donald Trump believes Apple can make a signature iPhone in the United States to avoid new tariffs. Well, here's the thing. If they make iPhones in the U.S., they're going to cost even more than they already cost now. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Because they're going to have to pay more to have them made and manufactured. I mean, the parts and all of that's going to cost more. So anyway, Martin said that Apple's costs would skyrocket if it began building its marquee product in the U.S. She isn't the only one on Wall Street raising this concern. Wedbush analyst Dan Ives said an iPhone would cost $3,500 if produced in this country. Okay. Additionally, the process of Apple moving its supply chain to the U.S. would take years, he said. Okay, most supply chain experts say making iPhones completely in the U.S. is absolutely impossible. This just shows how foolish Trump is. I mean, how did he think this was a good, plausible idea? At the end of the day, if this were beneficial and cost effective for them, don't you think Apple would already be doing it? And does he really think that he can come in and give a tech giant advice on how to have their products manufactured and where? Like, Trump is a whole idiot. I hope y'all are understanding. Now, when asked by a reporter about iPhone production moving, Levitt said on Tuesday that Trump wants to bring manufacturing jobs to the United States. She said he believes the U.S. has the workforce and resources to make the smartphone domestically. This man has no idea what he's even talking about. He's just pulling things out of the air. This is what he's doing. Why would you speak about something that you've done no research on? You have no knowledge of the industry or how these things even work. That's what Trump does. He just says whatever, okay? He believes we have the labor, we have the workforce, we have the resources to do it, okay? This is what she said of Trump's position on making iPhones in the U.S. And as you know, Apple has invested $500 billion here in the United States, she says. So if Apple didn't think the United States could do it, they probably wouldn't have put up that big chunk of change. Now, Martin's comments come as investors dump Apple shares given its manufacturing exposure to China. The Asian country is facing a cumulative tariff rate of 104% just after midnight following Trump's tit-for-tat retaliation. Other countries where Apple also manufacturers such as India and Vietnam are also facing levies. Now, altogether, Martin said Trump's tariffs will push costs for Apple about 50% higher. You see how he doesn't think things through? Trump just isn't that smart. And it's just the fact that he doesn't think things through. He doesn't gather the proper information. He doesn't even go to anyone to advise him before he comes up with these ridiculously, wildly concocted ideas that make no sense. Okay, that make no sense whatsoever. Now, Apple stock struggles. Apple shares whipsawed. What is that? Or whipsawed. I'm sorry. I was like, what? Okay, whipsawed. And I never even heard that expression before. It must be something that other people that don't look like me use. But anyway, Apple shares whipsawed in Tuesday's session with the stock last sliding nearly 2%. Now, the stock has plunged around 20% over the past 5 trading days as investors assessed what Trump's plan meant for the well-known maker of iPhones and iPads, among other products. So UBS estimated on Monday that Trump's reciprocal tariff plan could force Apple to raise the price of its highest-end iPhone, which is the 16 Pro Max, by as much as $350 for American consumers. Now, Martin warned that Apple passing down cost increases to U.S. consumers, that could drive inflation even higher. Okay, so for investors, Martin said to take a pause before buying the dip. Most analysts have not yet adjusted earning estimates for the company, given that the uncertainty around trade policy, because of this uncertainty around the trade policy. Now, she said traders could be in for more downside if levies go into effect as originally presented, or if the business faces other shocks, saying there's lots of worst case scenarios for Apple. And then she started listing retaliatory measures from China or the country invading Taiwan as two examples. Honey, Trump is just a sad story waiting to be read. Okay, please pay attention. Oh, nefarious. Queen Sam says, Queen, that sounds like the word coffee Trump used in the Kofi Trump used in his last administration. I've never seen that word before. Okay. Patrick Strike says, China has been manufacturing Apple everything since 2001. They don't care because they've been ready to release their version of Apple goods. Right. You know, they are the kings, or the best, shall I say, at trademark infringement. All right. Absolutely. And can sell it at a much cheaper price because they can manufacture it at a much cheaper price. Okay. RK said, and those idiots will buy them. I mean, hey, some people will. The classic one said he's a big orange bully. I mean, he's absolutely crazy. That's what he is. Okay, so now let's talk about how he tried to get out of this defamation lawsuit that was filed against him by the Central Park Five. So let's talk about it, because I'm going to go in a second. I'm going to go to this news report. So a judge rules that Trump, and this came out yesterday, a judge rules that Trump can't get rid of the Central Park Five defamation lawsuit. President Donald Trump lost a bid to dismiss a defamation lawsuit brought by plaintiffs known as the Exonerated Five, formerly known as the Central Park Five. Now, Thursday's court ruling brings Trump closer to potential civil liability for comments he made about them during a presidential debate against Kamala Harris last year. But it doesn't guarantee that the plaintiffs will ultimately succeed in their case. Well, I hope they do succeed in the case, because I know Trump will be so angry if he has to pay them a single dime, okay, for things that he said with his silly self. And so anyway, with that all being said, let's go to this news report. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance.
Exonerated members of the group known as the Central Park Five are suing Donald Trump for defamation after comments he made about them at a presidential debate last month. The complaint accuses the former president of making, quote, demonstrably false statements while on stage in Pennsylvania in September. Trump falsely claimed that the group of Black and Latino men, who were just teenagers at the time, had pleaded guilty when they were tried in connection with the brutal assault and rape of a woman who was running in Central Park back in 1989. He also said that the victim had died, all things that are not true.
They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty.
Now, you see how he didn't even know what the hell he was talking about when he spoke on it? First of all, the victim didn't die. Okay, that's for number one. Okay, just an idiot. And they didn't plead guilty. Lord have mercy. This is an idiot. See, this is what I'm talking about. He runs his mouth and doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Again, all that not true. A spokesperson for the Trump campaign is calling the lawsuit an attempt to distract the American people. We have NBC News legal analyst Danny Savallo here to help break this down for us. Danny, good morning. Always great to have you with us. So the Central Park Five, they spent years behind bars for a crime that ultimately they didn't commit. Remind us how that was, that they were ultimately cleared, and the suffering they say that they went through because of that and really are still going through.
After they were convicted and serving time, completely lucky to them, a serial rapist who had raped women around that same time confessed, and DNA evidence confirmed that he was, as his story said, the only perpetrator of the crime. So in relatively short order, most of the defendants were released, their convictions overturned. So this is something that had that was not the result of additional investigation. If for whatever reason the real doer confessed, DNA evidence confirmed it. Otherwise, those kids would still be in prison today, probably, depending on their sentence.
What has to be proven here? Because defamation can be tricky, right? I mean, is this as clear-cut as it looks?
This is one of those cases where you don't need a whole lot of discovery. You could probably go to trial next month. You get a couple experts maybe, but what is there that you need a lot of discovery for? You've got a transcript, you've got the video, you've seen the entire case in the last minute, and it's that statement. And the question is, first, was that a false statement? And second, did it cause the plaintiffs harm? And when you accuse people of a crime, generally speaking, the harm is presumed. So the real inquiry is, was that a false statement? And was it a false statement that was made deliberately? And he's obviously intentionally making that statement. So it looks like Trump has a problem. I'll just add that the attorneys, I happen to know the attorneys representing the plaintiffs here. This is not a fly-by-night law firm just throwing something against the wall and hoping something will stick. These guys are titans of the personal injury world. So for them to take on this case means they think it has value, and they win. And I'm biased because I've worked with them a little in the past, but I can tell you they're no joke. They win cases.
Are they seeking?
Yeah, they're no Tony Busby, who absolutely is a fly-by-night ambulance chaser. But let's continue.
Damages?
Of course, they're going to seek. And we're in a really interesting era because I handle personal injury type cases where in the past, defamation cases were not seen as particularly appetizing cases. But in a Trump era, in an era with a lot of very famous people saying dumb things, we have a strange situation where you might have a plaintiff who has a shattered femur, real medical injuries, and they might only be entitled to about a few $1 million in damages. But defamation cases are getting these $100 million verdicts with hardly a medical record to be seen other than maybe some emotional damage. So defamation cases, the right kind, and this may be the right kind, can be huge, not very expensive to prosecute, and not take that long to resolve. This is in federal court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, a place where I've been several times. It'll move pretty quickly, and it'll go to trial, but the reality is it will not go to trial. They'll get a trial date pretty soon. This case will, in all likelihood, settle.
All right, Danny Savalos, we know you'll stay on it for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, so y'all heard that. At the end of the day, honey, that was absolutely defamation. All right, that's absolutely what that was. So let's go over the law documents because I just so happen to have them. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen so we can get into it because Trump needs to sit down somewhere. See, he's always running his foolish mouth without doing a bit of research, without asking a question or two. All he had to do was ask a few questions or just hit Google. But no, he got up there running his mouth, trying to go in on Kamala and not even knowing what he's talking about. Now here he is. Here he is. All right, likes up, everyone. Please don't forget to like and share. During the 2024 presidential election cycle, then candidate and now President Donald J. Trump faced then candidate and then Vice President Kamala Harris in a televised debate hosted by the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. Now, at the debate, defendant made certain comments about the Central Park Five, a name which for decades has been used to refer to plaintiffs Yusuf Salaam, Raymond Santana, Kevin Richardson, Antron Brown, and Corey Wise. Based on those comments and several others that defendant has made about plaintiffs over the years, plaintiffs brought this lawsuit alleging defamation, false light, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, all under Pennsylvania law. Defendant now moves to dismiss the complaint in its entirety pursuant to federal law of civil procedure. Now, with that all being said, let's get into the factual background. In analyzing a motion to dismiss, the court must take the facts as alleged in plaintiffs. Although the instant case was born out of comments made at the debate, the story spans nearly 35 years. In April of 1989, a string of violent crimes occurred in New York City's Central Park. One woman, Patricia Mailey, was assaulted and raped, and two men, David Lewis and John Laughlin, were assaulted in a different portion of the park, all while jogging. Plaintiffs, teenagers at the time, were each interrogated by law enforcement in connection with the crimes. Initially, plaintiffs denied any connection with the assaults and rape. Yet after hours of coercive interrogation and without any attorney present, four plaintiffs, Santana, Richardson, Brown, and Wise, eventually confessed to both the assault and rape of Mailey. Now, and the assault of Louis Laughlin. Plaintiff Salam never confessed. Now, still, the police took extensive notes during their interrogation, which purportedly implicated him in the crimes as well. Plaintiffs quickly recanted their confessions. Okay, now here's the thing. This is where Trump is confused. He thinks that they went into court and pled guilty. No. When they were being interrogated, which was for hours upon hours with no adult supervision, guardian, no counsel present, which is absolutely not supposed to happen, they were intimidated and they were coerced into making those confessions. And that's why they later recanted them when they got legal counsel and all of that. But they shouldn't even have ever been interrogated without their parents at least being present. Okay, so Trump's just such an idiot. But anyway, so plaintiffs quickly recanted their confessions, but the criminal process had begun. Plaintiffs were indicted and charged with attempted murder, rape, sodomy, assault, robbery, sexual abuse, and riot. Each of them pleaded not guilty and maintained their innocence throughout trial and for the years that followed. Nevertheless, by the end of 1990, each plaintiff had been convicted of at least one of some of the charges brought against him. Now, about 12 years later, in 2002, one Mateus Reyes confessed that it had been him, not any of the plaintiffs who had raped and assaulted Maylee. Now, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office reopened its investigation into the assaults, and given Reyes' confession as well as DNA evidence, all plaintiffs' convictions were vacated and the indictments dismissed. Now, over the years, the media attached the plaintiffs the moniker the Central Park Five. The plaintiffs now refer to themselves as the Exonerated Five. Now, after plaintiffs were named as suspects in the 1989 investigation, but before they were indicted, defendant took out a full-page advertisement in a handful of New York City newspapers. The ad did not identify plaintiffs by name, but the parties did not dispute that the ad was about them. Its headline read, "Bring back the death penalty, bring back our police." In the body of the ad, defendant commented in part saying, "Mayor Koch has stated that hate and rancor should be removed from our hearts. I do not think so. I want to hate these muggers and murderers." This is what Trump wrote, you all. They should be forced to suffer, and when they kill, they should be executed for their crimes. First of all, they didn't kill anybody. They must serve as examples so that others will think long and hard before committing a crime or an act of violence. Yes, Mayor Koch, I want to hate these murderers, and I always will. I am not looking to psychoanalyze or understand them. I am looking to punish them. Now I want you to pay attention, because after all these decades have passed, this idiot still does not know that they never murdered the woman. Did he even follow the trial? No, he couldn't have, or he would have known that the woman didn't even die. Okay? Did he read a newspaper article? No, or he would have known that the victim didn't die. What did he do? Did he even watch a full news report ever? I doubt it. And if he did, he must have been half listening. But what Trump likely did is what he always does, even until this day. He listens and hears bits and pieces of conversations going on around him. Okay? He gets bits and pieces of details and doesn't get the full story. So he doesn't know most of the time what the hell he's talking about. Okay, please pay attention. All right? And sadly, some of y'all do the same thing on social media. But let me continue. Now, with that all being said, in 2013, over a decade after plaintiffs were exonerated, defendant tweeted his thoughts on a film documenting their convictions and exonerations. In those tweets, defendant described the documentary as a one-sided piece of garbage that didn't explain the horrific crimes of these young men while in the park. A few months later, defendant was asked via Twitter, "How do you feel about the Central Park Five? Or how do you feel that the Central Park Five were innocent?" And he responded saying, "Innocent of what? How many people did they mug?" Y'all hear this? I mean, he's made a myriad of allegations or a myriad of statements against them that are absolutely false. A year after the exchange, plaintiffs settled a civil lawsuit against the city of New York for their wrongful convictions. The settlement prompted defendant to pen an editorial in the New York Daily News calling it a disgrace, stating that plaintiffs did not exactly have the past of angels, and asking what about the other people who were brutalized that night, in addition to the jogger. So basically said, okay, even if they didn't do anything to her, what about the other people they mugged? They didn't do any of it. This is how ignorant he is. Now, according to the complaint, defendant has since made numerous public statements regarding the Central Park assaults, the criminal case, the trials, the exoneration, and the settlement within or with the city. In 2016, defendant was elected to his first term as president of the United States. In 2019, a reporter asked him, the Central Park Five, they've been exonerated. There have been movies and videos. You came out with a full page ad saying that they should die. They should have the death penalty. And then to which Trump replied, why do you bring that question up now? It's an interesting time to bring it up. You have people on both sides of that. They admitted their guilt. If you look at Linda Fairstein, and if you look at some of those prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled the case. So we'll leave it at that. Well, of course, Linda Fairstein didn't want them to get a settlement because that just proved that she was wrong in her prosecution of them in the first place. Okay, now fast forward, okay, another 5 years to the defendant's 2024 presidential campaign. During the portion of the debate concerning race and politics, Harris commented, let's remember, this is the same individual, referring to the defendant, Trump, who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park Five. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. About 60 seconds later, after some back and forth between Harris and the debate moderators, defendant said, this is the most diverse presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country. And they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said they plead guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt people, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled we're not guilty. And then they pled we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back 40 years, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. He thought he was really going in on Kamala at the time. The defendant in his briefs urges the court to contextualize the statement as a response to Harris's statement 60 seconds before, and to interpret the statement as his recollections of why he placed the 1989 ad. Before addressing that point, however, as an initial matter, it is necessary to determine exactly on what portions of the statements plaintiffs premise their claims. As conceded by the plaintiffs at oral argument, the following sentences do not refer to plaintiffs, say nothing about plaintiffs, and thus cannot serve as a basis for their claims. Okay, that's the oral argument. Now, this is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she said going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me. Hold on, why am I reading this again? I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong spot. I scrolled up accidentally, I do believe. Okay, so anyway, so they say, today, the court must determine whether these statements support claims of defamation, false light, and IIED when viewed through the lens of the standard that the court must adopt in reviewing a motion to dismiss. Okay, pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 12B6. Now, To survive a motion to dismiss, a complaint must contain sufficient factual matter, except it is true, to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face. Okay, then they reference some other cases. Now, a claim has facial plausibility when the plaintiff pleads factual content that allows the court to draw the reasonable inference that the defendant is liable for the misconduct alleged. Okay? Threadbare recitals of the elements of a cause of action supported by mere conclusory statements do not suffice. Now, legal conclusions are disregarded, well-pleaded facts are taken as true, and determination is made as to whether those facts state a plausible claim for relief. Now, to state a claim for defamation in Pennsylvania, a plaintiff must allege 1, the defamatory character of the communication, 2, its publication by the defendant, 3, its application to the defendant, 4, the understanding of the recipient of its defamatory meaning, and 5, the understanding by the recipient of it as intended to be applied to the plaintiff, 6, special harm resulting to the plaintiff from its publication, and 7, abuse of a conditionally privileged occasion. Now, defendant argues that plaintiff has failed to adequately plead the first element of a defamation claim, that the statement in question was defamatory in character. First, he submits that his statements were statements of opinion, not assertions of facts, and therefore are not capable of defamatory meaning, because the general rule is that opinions cannot be capable of a defamatory meaning under Pennsylvania law. Let me tell you this right here. He did not say that as an opinion. He didn't say that as an opinion, because here's the difference. Okay? Here is the difference. Hold on. Queen Sam said Trump just hates when he's wrong and will never apologize when he is. Just gives a word salad into some other topic. Exactly. He deflects and gaslights. That's because he's a narcissist. Narcissists never apologize. They never accept or admit accountability. That's what they don't do. But here's the thing. Trump is trying to say that these were not made as statements of fact, but they were rather made as states of opinion. Now, that's not true, because he specifically lied. He said they pled guilty and they did not. Okay, he says they pled guilty and then they said they were not guilty. That's not true. They never pled guilty. He also said numerous of times that they killed somebody and they did not. That is not his opinion. He didn't say allegedly. Okay, he didn't say this is my opinion. He said it as a statement of fact. Now, here's the thing. Had he said something along the lines of, well, they were convicted, they were initially convicted, they didn't plead guilty, but I believe, or I've always felt, that they were guilty. That's an opinion, because he would have said that he felt or he thought, or that was his assertion of the facts, but he didn't say that. He literally said that they pled guilty, to which they did not, so that makes it a whole lie, to which that makes it defamation. Okay? And he said it more than once. So he needs to sit down somewhere. This dog ain't gonna hunt. And that's why the judge didn't dismiss it, because the judge knows that he absolutely lied on them. And then second, he disputes that his statements at the debate were defamatory, of a defamatory character, because he did not tend to harm the plaintiff's reputation as to lower them in the estimation of the community. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. When you say something like that about somebody, that's exactly what you're saying, because here's why. Because for one, they had already by this time been exonerated. They had also won a settlement from the state. So that was proof of their guilt. Their convictions were exonerated. That means that other evidence came forward that proved that they did not do it. So that proves they're innocent. Okay? So with that all being said, what is he even talking about? It's absolutely defamatory. And he did say it to hurt their reputations, because if people have said that they're innocent, they were wrongfully convicted, now they've been exonerated, and the state owes them compensation for such things, then for him to come out and say, oh no, they said this, they said that, and they killed somebody, he's trying to dispute or debunk what has already been said as fact. And you're damaging their reputation by doing so. So miss me with it, Trump. Now, it goes on to say defendant's first two arguments that his statement was an opinion and lacked defamatory character inform one another, so they will be considered together. Now, when evaluating a defamation claim, it is for the court to determine if in the first instance, whether the statement of which the plaintiff complains is capable of a defamatory meaning. They reference several cases. When they say at the onset, two questions require answers. Number one, whether the communication was reasonably capable of conveying the particular meaning ascribed to it by the plaintiff. Number two, whether that meaning is defamatory in character. Now, the first question focuses on interpreting defendant's statement, and the second asks whether such an interpretation is defamatory. Regarding the first question, a plaintiff need not establish that a statement's alleged defamatory meaning is the only possible interpretation, merely that the alleged defamatory meaning is a reasonable one. So, even where there is a plausible innocent interpretation, if there is an alternative defamatory interpretation, the issue must proceed to a jury to determine if the defamatory meaning was understood by the recipients. Okay, so are you all understanding this? So basically, even if it made sense, or even if it seemed reasonable, or there was some plausible, innocent interpretation, but there was also a way that somebody could misinterpret it as something defamatory, then the jury has to decide if that defamatory meaning was understood by the recipient. And that would be whomever else heard the statements. Did they take it as something harmful or innocent, or did it come off as something defamatory? And definitely that's defamatory, okay? Because like I said, they've already been exonerated. Now, essentially, the first question is whether, colloquially speaking, the man on the Broad Street line could reasonably understand defendant's statements to mean what plaintiffs say they mean. This first question is where defendant's opinion arguments come into play. Now, in interpreting an allegedly defamatory statement, the general rule is that only statements of fact, not expressions of opinion, can support an action for defamation. Whether a given statement is an opinion or fact is a question of law to be decided by the court. Now, Pennsylvania courts distinguish a statement of fact from a statement of opinion by whether the statement can be objectively determined. Likes up, everyone. Please don't forget to like and share. Thank you. Now, but the bar of using an opinion to support a defamation claim is not absolute. Even if a statement is construed as an opinion, it can still be defamatory if it contained a demonstrably false factual connotation. Okay? The second question, the defamatory in character inquiry, focuses on the effect the statement is fairly calculated to produce, the impression that it would naturally engender in the minds of the average person among whom it is intended to circulate. Now, a statement is defamatory in character if it tends to harm the reputation of another as to lower him in the estimation of the community, or to deter third persons from associating or dealing with him. Well, of course, saying these people are murderers, robbers, and rapists, okay, and saying that they admitted to it and at first pled guilty to it, that's absolutely, detrimental to someone's reputation. And especially to those Americans or people watching and listening to Trump who don't know the actual details of the case. Because let's not forget, this happened in 1989. It was in 2002, I believe, when they were exonerated. They were awarded a settlement in 2013. So the younger generation may not know the details of this story, specifically those who don't look like us. Okay? So he's out here spreading false narratives and just telling flat out lies. Now, the statement in question must be construed as a whole and each word must be read in the context of all the other words. In defendant's view, the only reasonable understanding of his onstage comments is that they explained his motivations in taking out the 1989 ad. Once plaintiffs pled guilty, then they pled "we're not guilty." That's what Trump said. Now, he was motivated to take out the ad calling for their execution. If his explanation is taken as true, then he argues his statements are not actionable because they are pure opinion, and further, they lack defamatory character because in context, they do not assert anything about plaintiffs. But the court does not look at defendant's interpretation of his own statements as a motion to dismiss. You see, sorry, Trump, it's not going to work. Plaintiff's interpretation is what steers the analysis, you see. Thus, the first question that a court must address is whether the communication was reasonably capable of conveying the particular meaning ascribed to it by the plaintiff. Okay? So plaintiff's interpretation of the defendant's comments is that they asserted three key propositions. The first is that the plaintiffs pleaded guilty. The second is that the plaintiffs badly hurt someone. And the third is that plaintiffs killed someone. Construing defendant's comments as a whole and in the light most favorable to plaintiffs, as a court must at this stage, such a reading is reasonable. And defendant's assertions that plaintiffs pleaded guilty and that the plaintiffs killed someone can be objectively determined to be false. So defendant's statement must be construed as one of fact, not opinion, just like I told you. Okay, Trump is so stupid. I mean, just beyond. So with that all being said, a statement of fact can be verified as false or true. You see, that's like I said, with the difference between him saying it's his opinion. No, he said it as a statement of fact because what he said can absolutely be disputed with proof and receipts. Okay, so it's not an opinion. He stated it as factual. Whereas an expression of opinion only conveys a subjective belief of the speaker. All right, in fact, none of them pleaded guilty and none of them were charged with killing anyone. They didn't even go to trial for murder. So ridiculous. Just a little reading could have given him the truth. Now, and I think that Trump knows the truth, you see. I think that Trump knows the truth. I think that the thing is, who ill-advised the Donald to take out the ad? I don't think anyone advised him. I think he took it out because that's how he felt. I think that he, back then when he took it out, that he, first of all, believed that they were guilty. I believe that he really believed that they were guilty. Okay, and I think that maybe he had heard about, because this was highly publicized over the news and everything and radio. So I think that he likely heard that they had confessed initially to the prosecution when they were interrogated. And so he definitely thought they were guilty. And even though later they came in court, they recanted the confessions and came in court and pled not guilty. I think he harped on the fact that they ever confessed to it in the first place. Even though not thinking about that these are children, but do they ever think of our children as children or teenagers? No. Okay? They treat them like adults and never give them the benefit of the doubt in these types of situations. So I think that further later on, when they were exonerated and it was proven by DNA evidence that they did not do it, couldn't have done it, someone else is arrested and charged for it. I think that being the narcissist that he is, the person who never will admit any wrong, and if you come for him saying that he did something wrong, he'll say that it's a witch hunt, that you're fear-mongering, and that you're trying to just gaslight or whatever. Okay, that's what he'll do, rather than accepting accountability. I think that once the truth came out, he did not want to go back on the fact that he paid for those ads. Like $80,000 for these ads, I do believe it was. I don't think that he wanted to walk that back, admit that he was wrong, and that he spent that money and tried to paint that narrative, and it was all absolutely false. So he keeps up the ruse. He continues to say the same old talking points, because you can't convince me that at this point, after all of these decades and all these different times that this case has been brought into the media, highlighted in the media, these men have been given awards and everything. They've been brought out during award ceremonies and praised and everything. Okay. At the end of the day, you can't convince me that after all of these things have transpired, that he doesn't know at this point that they absolutely didn't do it. He knows they didn't do it by now, but he's not gonna backpedal on what he said. He's gonna keep up the ruse, because that's how much of a narcissist he is. He's not gonna admit that he did anything wrong ever. Okay? So, given the defendant's communications were reasonably capable of conveying the particular meaning ascribed to them by the plaintiff, the next question is whether that meaning is defamatory in character. On the point, Pennsylvania law is straightforward. Statements inputting the commission of an indictable offense are capable of defamatory meaning as a matter of law. And then they reference another case. So anyway, I think I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to read this footnote here. It says, at oral argument, defendant's counsel argued that Thomas Merton, this is another case, a case not cited in defendant's briefing, supports his position that the context surrounding defendant's statements warrants a conclusion that they are not defamatory. Okay, I'm not going to read all of that. So it's just basically comparing this case. Now, defendant next argues that his motion to dismiss must be granted because statements were substantially true. Truth is an affirmative defense under Pennsylvania law. What was true? What was true? He's arguing that his motion to dismiss should be granted because the statements were substantially true. Okay, how's he saying they were true, but at the same time saying they were his opinion? Truth is an affirmative defense under Pennsylvania law. And then when an affirmative defense is raised, as it is here on a motion to dismiss, only those matters that are apparent on the face of the complaint may be considered in evaluating whether the statements are substantially true. So in support of his substantial truth argument, defendant equates Santana, Richardson, Brown, and Wise's confessions during their interrogation with pleading guilty. This argument, of course, regardless of its merit, cannot apply to Salam, who never confessed nor pleaded guilty. It cannot be gainsaid that there is a difference between confessing to a crime and pleading guilty to one. Specifically, when a criminal defendant pleads guilty, he or she, of course, forgoes not only a fair trial, but also other accompanying constitutional guarantees. Yeah, there's a difference. And I guess Trump doesn't know that. Just doesn't understand that. Now, because pleading guilty is a serious matter, the Constitution insists, among other things, that the defendant enter a guilty plea that is voluntary and that the defendant must knowingly, intelligently, and with sufficient awareness of the relevant circumstances and likely consequences waive certain constitutional rights. As such, courts usually must hold an in-person hearing to determine that a criminal defendant's plea is voluntary, knowing, and intelligent. And after a court accepts a guilty plea, defendants, as a general rule, cannot walk it back and subsequently plead not guilty. Okay, you see how it makes no sense? This is how dumb Trump is, you all. This is how it's insidiously obtuse Trump is. He doesn't even know that once they walk into court and plead guilty, you cannot then walk back in court and say, wait a minute, no, I plead not guilty. Okay? You can't even do that. So for him to sit there and say first they pled guilty and then they pled they were not guilty, you can't even do that. And this man's the president. Okay, are y'all listening? How dumb is this man? Beyond obtuse. Beyond obtuse. Like, who doesn't know this? Okay, so anyway, let me continue. I'm going to wrap it up in a second. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. Anyway, so on the other hand, When a criminal defendant confesses during interrogation, that confession does not have conclusive legal effect. In fact, because mid-interrogation decisions of guilt often pose a risk that the defendant confessed due to coercive interrogation practices, such a confession may not even be admissible in court, depending on the circumstances of the interrogation. So as to the issue of whether pleading guilty and admitting to a crime are so substantially similar as to insulate defendant from liability is instructive. Now, in that case, Purcell, who had been charged with violating a towing ordinance, was convicted by a magistrate, but he appealed, won, and his conviction was overturned. That's just like the case with Harvey Weinstein. Now, during the pendency of his appeal, however, a radio station publicized his conviction, sensationalizing the story of the crimes he purportedly committed. Now, when Purcell sued the radio station for defamation, the defendant argued that its sensational publication of the Purcell's conviction was substantially true, and to a certain extent, the broadcast was literally true, for no court had yet to overturn Purcell's conviction at the time it aired its story. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania rejected that argument, finding that the stark, unbudgeable fact remains that Purcell did appeal, and that appeal stayed all punitive proceedings. It did more than that. It nullified for the period of appellate pendency the effect of everything which had... Hold on, I scrolled down too much. Hold on, where was I? Hold on, beloveds. Oh my God, I scrolled down too far. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it did more than that. It nullified for the period of appellate pendency the effect of everything which had been presented by the Commonwealth, so that Purcell stood before the world as unoffending as anyone who had never been accused. As such, the broadcast was liable for its defamatory publication. Okay, now I want you all to pay attention, because here's the point they're making right here. They're saying that this man was actually convicted. On appeal, his case was overturned. Okay? So he won his appeal to have the case overturned. Now, the radio station argued that when they aired the decision, it was still on appeal. And so when they said that he was convicted, that they were telling the truth. So that wasn't defamatory, but they're saying that it was defamatory because they were already in the appeals process or whatever, and it was eventually overturned. So that was deemed as defamatory, and that made even more sense than what Trump is saying, because in Trump's case, they were never convicted of murder. Okay? They were never convicted of murder, and that's what he foolishly kept saying. So he's just wrong all the way around. Now, I just find it all interesting because, like I said, I don't know who's, advising Trump, if anyone. Okay, where are his attorneys? Are they asleep at the wheel? Defendant cites for the proposition that courts at both the federal and state level have consistently found that when a defendant incorrectly uses legal terminology, especially regarding criminal law, those statements may nonetheless be substantially true. 2 cases, and then they reference some cases. Now, neither carry any weight here. They are out of jurisdiction and non-presidential. So anyway, with that all being said, and even if they did, they are distinguishable. Okay? So in Olivet, the defendant published an article stating that the plaintiff pleaded guilty to money laundering, when in fact the plaintiff pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit money laundering. The district court determined that the defendant's statement could not support a defamation claim because the article was substantially true. The effect on the average reader is simply that Olivet had pleaded guilty to some crime relating to money laundering. But here, the gist of the defamation is different. Okay, in Olivet, the district court's point was that the plaintiff there had pleaded guilty to a criminal offense and had never disputed that he had committed such an offense. Here, unlike in Olivet, it is simply not true that the plaintiffs committed the crimes charged, let alone that they pleaded guilty to them or that someone was even killed. Okay, so anyway, this is all crazy. Aqua Girl Rising said, Queen, you're going to have content for the next few years dealing with these fools. Shaking my head. I know, right? It's a mess. It is all a mess. Okay, so anyway, with that all being said, the bottom line is Trump's not getting out of it, though he's trying so hard, okay? He's trying his darndest. He's trying his darndest. And so the second case cited by defendant for the proposition is Rock. Okay, there, the defendant reported that plaintiff had been charged with sexual assault when the plaintiff had been arrested but not charged. The case went to trial. The verdict was appealed to the Court of Appeals and then the Michigan Supreme Court. Now, thus, the question of whether the report was substantially true occurred long after discovery had closed, after painstaking review of the whole record based on testimony and documents from trial. Similarly, Third Circuit precedents requires development of the whole record here. When defendant's affirmative defense that his statement was true now is not apparent on the face of the complaint. Therefore, the affirmative defense of substantial truth is not viable as a defense, at least at this motion to dismiss. So, in Pennsylvania, a party is subject to liability for false light if they publicize a matter concerning another that places the other before the public in a false light. And if the false light is which the other was placed, or in which the other was placed, would be highly offensive to a reasonable person. Defendant argues that plaintiff failed to sufficiently allege that defendant acted with actual malice. Okay, now to plausibly plead actual malice, a plaintiff must plead facts supporting the conclusion that the defendant acted with knowledge of the falsity of the statement or in reckless disregard as truth or falsity. Well, to me, he acted in malice because, for one, he could easily, I think he, of course, he knew the truth because the truth's been out there for years. Okay, so for him to say that was a blatant lie. It was an outright lie. So that's malice enough for me. Okay, and that's my opinion. So plaintiffs have done so here. They allege the following: that in 2013, defendant tweeted about his experience watching a documentary. He done told on himself. Watching a documentary detailing plaintiff's coerced admission of guilt, subsequent not guilty plea, conviction, and exoneration. In 2014, defendant wrote an editorial in the New York Daily News responding to plaintiff's civil statement with the city of New York. And in 2019, defendant did not assert that plaintiffs pleaded guilty when directly asked his thoughts on plaintiff. Further, at oral arguments, defendant's counsel conceded that defendant is closely familiar with plaintiff's not guilty plea, conviction, and subsequent exoneration, such that he knows that plaintiffs did not plead guilty or hurt anyone. So he is blatantly lying, like I said, because I knew there's no way in hell that after all this information has been out that we've all been privy to, all of these documentaries, all of these different times they've been awarded, the fact that they were compensated, that movie When They See Us or When You See Us came out, when in 2019, all of this stuff, you mean to tell me this man doesn't know the truth of the case? Yes, he does, and he refuses to accept the truth and has continued to perpetuate a whole lie. So that's malice right there, okay? So thus it can be plausibly inferred that defendant had sufficient knowledge of plaintiff's wrongful conviction and exoneration to have understood that plaintiffs did not plead guilty. Nobody died as a result of the crimes that day in Central Park, and plaintiffs are indeed not guilty. Because plaintiffs have plausibly alleged actual malice, defendant's motion to dismiss shall be denied as to the plaintiff's false light claim. Okay? To claim for To state a claim for IIED under Pennsylvania law, plaintiffs must plausibly allege, number 1, extreme and outrageous conduct by defendant, number 2, which is intentional or reckless and causes severe emotional distress. Okay, the first element requires plaintiffs to point to some behavior from defendant that is so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all possible bounds of decency and to be regarded as atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized society. Well, honey, Trump does that every day if you ask the Queen. Now, examples of behavior sufficiently egregious to support an IIED claim include 1, killing the plaintiff's son with an automobile and then burying the body rather than reporting the incident to the police. 2, intentionally fabricating documents that lead to the plaintiff's arrest for murder. 3, knowingly releasing to the press false medical records diagnosing the plaintiff with a fatal disease. But mere insults, indignities, threats, and those were just some examples, okay? But mere insults, indignities, threats, annoyances, petty oppressions, or other trivialities are not enough, okay? So they say other trivialities are not enough. So with that all being said, and now let's talk about the outrageous conduct. Hold on. Okay. Lights up, everyone, please. Don't forget to like and share. Thank you. Okay, so the outrageous conduct. Generally, one defamatory statement cannot support a claim for IIED. Okay. Now, false accusations and defamation in our society cannot be viewed as outrageous, atrocious, and utterly intolerable conduct. If it were, virtually every defamation claim would be accompanied by one of infliction of emotional distress. But as plaintiffs note, Pennsylvania courts have stressed that continuing malicious actions are more likely to be deemed extreme and outrageous. Okay, now when a plaintiff predicates their IIED claim on a defendant's continuing malicious actions, courts consider conduct that precedes the 2-year limitations period in their analysis. Okay, so defendant statements long before the 2024 debate come into play because Trump had been saying stuff about these people for years. Plaintiffs argue that since 1989, defendant has engaged in a continuous malicious harassment campaign. As alleged, defendant's purported harassment campaign consisted of 1, defendant taking out the 1989 ad calling for plaintiff's execution. 2, defendant's 2 tweets about plaintiffs in 2013. 3, an editorial defendant wrote about plaintiff's settlement with the city of New York in 2014. 4, a response to a question about plaintiffs that was asked by a journalist in 2019. And 5, defendant's comments at the debate in 2024. So whether these facts rise to the level of outrageously necessary to support an IIED claim need not be answered at present. However, because plaintiff's IIED allegations are deficient in another respect. Okay, so in his briefing, defendant argues that, and we only have 2 more pages to go, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and finish, honey. It was getting juicy. I was thinking I'm just going to read some of it, but this is my first time reading this, okay? So it was getting juicy, so I just decided to keep going. Now, in his briefing, defendant argues that plaintiffs have not plausibly alleged that they have suffered from physical harm, seemingly in part because they have not included medical evidence of such harm in their complaint. At oral argument, defendant's counsel clarified that the argument was only that plaintiffs failed to allege physical harm. Medical evidence of such harm at the motion to dismiss stage is not necessary. Although most federal district courts in this circuit have declined to require specific allegations of medical evidence at the motion to dismiss stage, okay, in order to state a claim under which relief can be granted for the tort of intentional infliction of emotional distress, the plaintiffs must allege physical injury. So plaintiffs have not alleged that they suffered any physical harm in their complaint. The only allegation about harm is that as a result of defendant's comments, they have suffered severe emotional distress and reputational damage. So you have to prove, you see, as I told you all before, there's 4 elements you have to prove, you know, when you're proving defamation, okay? And one of them is you have to prove that you suffered some sort of loss, whether it was compensatory, you know, like you lost money or you lost endorsements or something like that. Now, that is not sufficient to substantiate an IIED claim, and so the claim must be dismissed. Now, this is the argument, okay, because plaintiff has not pled physical injury, her claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress will be dismissed, okay, and that's in the case that they were referencing, a case that they were trying to compare it to. Now, here's the conclusion. Plaintiffs request that should any of their claims be dismissed, they be given leave to amend. Okay, so basically they were saying that, look, if the judge decides to dismiss any of our claims, that they want to just be able to amend it and go back and fix whatever's wrong with the complaint. Now, the federal rules require that leave to amend be freely given when justice so requires. Now, among the grounds that could justify a denial of leave to amend are undue delay, bad faith, dilatory motive, prejudice, and futility. No such grounds are present here. Thus, plaintiff's defamation claim, to the extent that it is based on defamation by implication theory, and their IIED claim will be dismissed without prejudice, thus allowing plaintiffs leave to amend their complaint and respect to that theory and that claim as appropriate. An appropriate order follows. Okay, this is by the court, signed Wendy Beetlestone. Okay, so that all being said, you know, one has to wonder, why did Trump just continue to keep talking about these young men? Why did he continue to talk about these men? Well, because he's an idiot. He just couldn't shut his mouth. And because it was continuously made, the point was continuously made about how Trump was putting out all that money on those ads and all of that for billboards and everything, trying to have them executed when they didn't even kill anybody. And of course, it was already shown that they had been coerced into those confessions. Okay, and here's the thing. Now, even though it would be years later before they were actually exonerated through DNA evidence, the fact of the matter was, even when they were initially convicted, it came out that they had been coerced into those confessions, how the prosecution had engaged in prosecutorial misconduct. That was already known, okay? So he is just ridiculous at the end of the day. All right, Nessa G said he's an idiot and he tries to stir up hate. Yes, he does. And then talking about this is the most diverse presidency in the history of the United States. I'm sorry, when and where? And how many black people are in his cabinet? Talking about diversity, by the way. Okay. D. Major says the Supreme Court, in the Supreme Court, even the conservative judges ruled against Trump. Okay. Oh, hold on. There was one more thing I forgot to tell you all. Or did I tell you all about it? That man, first of all, hold on. I got two. I'm sorry. I told you I had a lot of receipts today. Two more things. I want to talk about Michelle Obama. I want to show the video of what she had to say about her and Barack's marriage. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene got dragged. And then, but it was something else about Trump was ordered by the Supreme Court. Remember that man, that Trump's silly self in his administration? Did I report that to you all already? Did I talk about that already? The man who was mistakenly sent to jail in El Salvador. Yeah, I didn't talk about that. Okay, so let's get into it. Because the Supreme Court has told Trump's silly self that they have to get that man back here. Okay, I want you to pay attention. Because they're saying, the administration has said, oh, we can't get him back. We may mistakenly send him over there, even though that's not where he belongs and we had no business doing it. It's clearly illegal. We can't get him back. As if there's no remedy for the man or his family. Then, with that all being said, let's not forget how Fox News came out and tried to justify Trump's foolishness, trying to say that the man was a former gang member and, he shouldn't have been here. He was only allowed here for a specific time or whatever, or usually when someone's given that type of deal that he was given to stay here, that they only get about 6 months, but he's been here for 7 years or however long. These people are just crazy. At the end of the day, they do whatever Trump tells them to do. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled unanimously that a Maryland man who was mistakenly sent to a mega jail in El Salvador, they got the man in prison, okay? Got the man locked up and the man didn't do a thing, that he must be returned to the United States. Now, in a 9-0 ruling, the justices declined to block a lower court's order to facilitate and effectuate bringing back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. But they also said a judge in the case may have extended her authority. Okay, so they say the Trump administration had appealed against the district court's order, but now government lawyers must explain to the judge what steps they're taking to return Mr. Garcia back to Maryland. The government has conceded that he was deported due to an administrative error, though it also alleges he is a member of the MS-13 gang, which his lawyer denied. That man ain't no gang member. Here's the thing. So you mean to tell me Trump's administration, if they falsely send someone, deport the wrong person, send them to the wrong place, have them locked up in a jail and they committed no crime, the best they can come up with is, well, he's an MS-13 gang member anyway. If he were an MS-13 gang member, why would they have allowed him to have political asylum? Because isn't that what he had? I do believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but why would they have allowed him to be here? So, following the Supreme Court's order, Judge Paula Zenas of Maryland, the district court, set a hearing for Friday afternoon to hear what steps the Trump administration is taking to return Mr. Garcia to the U.S. They're not taking any. They may take some now that they've been ordered to do so, but they weren't taking any. They said, we couldn't do it. We can't get it back. It's too bad. So sad. Hey, don't worry about it because, hey, he was a criminal anyway. Why was he here in the first place? Should never have been here. Isn't that what the reporter said on Fox News? Idiots. Mr. Garcia, a Salvadorian, is one of dozens of alleged gang members, migrants placed by the U.S. on military planes last month and flown to El Salvador's notorious CICOT, which is Terrorism Confinement Center, okay, under an arrangement between the two countries. Now, mind you, the key word here is alleged, okay? They didn't say that he is actually a gang member. That's what Trump's people said. They're saying alleged gang member, one of dozens of alleged gang member migrants. They know that man's not no darn gang member. In a statement on Thursday evening after the top court's decision, Simon Sandoval Mosenberg, a lawyer for Mr. Garcia, said the rule of law prevailed. The Supreme Court upheld the district judge's order that the government has to bring Kilmar home. And I know y'all don't care about the immigrants. Hey, I don't either. If they're here illegally, they should be coming here, the right way, as I've always said. But at the end of the day, you can't just be taking people that have been allowed to stay here, that didn't commit any crimes, and that have been here for years legally, and shipping them off somewhere. Can't do that. At least you shouldn't be doing that. That's crazy. Okay, and who knows how many times they've done something so stupid. Now, in its emergency appeal to the Supreme Court last week, the Trump administration argued that Judge Zenas lacked the authority to issue the order to return Mr. Garcia by Monday night, and that U.S. officials could not compel El Salvador to return him. They were just like, oh, our hands are tied. We can't do anything. U.S. Solicitor General Dean John Sauer wrote in his emergency court filing, the Constitution charges the president, not federal district courts, with the conduct of foreign diplomacy and protecting the nation against foreign terrorists, including by effectuating their removal. That's total gaslighting. What does that have to do with Mr. Kilmar besides nothing? Please pay attention. Now, on Monday, the Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, temporarily blocked Judge Zenas' order while it considered the matter. Issuing its decision in an unsigned order on Thursday, the justices directed Judge Zenas to explain her initial ruling and the extent to which she required the Trump administration to effectuate Mr. Garcia's return. They said she may have exceeded her authority, Oh, they're trying to say she's doing too much. She's out of bounds. She needs to stay in her lane. Okay, this is beyond her scope of authority, is what they're saying. Now, the district court, they say, the district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. This is what the Supreme Court said. Now, I'm going to show a video of what his wife had to say in just a second. Now, a Justice Department spokesperson told the BBC that the Supreme Court correctly recognized it is the exclusive prerogative of the president to conduct foreign affairs. By directly noting the deference owed to the executive branch, this ruling once again illustrates that activist judges do not have the jurisdiction to seize control of the president's authority to conduct foreign policy. The justices did not give the administration a deadline for when Mr. Garcia should have returned. This is the same thing that the guy on Fox News said. This is their argument, that they didn't give him a deadline or whatever. So what? We're supposed to let him just stay here forever? It's basically what he said. Okay, so anyway, Mr. Garcia, age 29, entered the U.S. illegally as a teenager from El Salvador. In 2019, he was arrested with 3 other men in Maryland and detained by federal immigration authorities. But an immigration judge granted him protection from deportation on the grounds that he might be at risk of persecution from local gangs in his home country. Now, he was a gang member when he was a teenager, or he may have been, but gangs were after him nonetheless. Now, his U.S. citizen wife, Jennifer Vasquez-Sora, has been calling for his release since his deportation. The bottom line is the man's not a gang member now. Now, I don't know that he ever was a gang member, but gang members were after him, and it could have been because he was a rival gang member. Who knows? Now, with that being said, I will continue fighting until my husband is home. Okay, and so with that being said, the thing is, like I said, if he was a gang member over in his country, that's when he was a teenager. The man's been here for years and he hasn't been a gang member over here. And I you know what I'm saying, at the end of the day, they're painting narratives. Hold on, I'm going to share the statement from his wife. Rise Ruby said, why don't they stay in their own country? We did. Did we? Some of us came from Africa, beloved. I mean, not me. I'm from the land formerly known as Turtle Islands, but I'm just saying, some of y'all are clearly Africans. Okay? That's why they call y'all's artists African Americans.
If I had all the money in the world, I'll spend it all just to buy one thing.
Si yo tuviera todo el dinero del mundo, lo utilizaría para hacer solamente una cosa.
A phone call to hear Kilmer's voice again and have the opportunity to talk to him. I miss you so much.
Te extraño tanto.
And I'm doing the best to fight for you and our children. We're still waiting for that call that we were promised.
Todavía estamos esperando por esa llamada que nos prometieron.
And I'm still holding to hope.
Y todavía estoy con mi fe.
Until I hear your voice again.
Well, that is a sad story for her. At the end of the day, honey, Trump don't care. Okay, he does not care at all. Okay, please pay attention. All right, Rise Ruby said, right, where's our reparations? That's what I want to know, beloved, okay? That's what I want to know. Where's the reparations? Rise Ruby said, no, we didn't. I'm not. They started that African crap in the 70s and 80s. Rise Ruby is going in, okay? But the bottom line is some of y'all are African, honey. Now, I'm not. I'm not from Africa, okay? My ancestry is right here. Some of y'all's artists, whether y'all want to admit it or not, clearly from the motherland. That's just what it is. All right. Adrian said, wow, Queen, some of us are clearly African. We have family, Queen. I'm American. Okay. All right. If y'all say so, I'm not going to argue with you at the end of the day. We didn't want to be called African. Stop. We didn't want to be called black, light skin. I don't know. I mean, we didn't come up with these things ourselves, except for, well, Jesse Jackson named you all African Americans. Now, I myself, I don't identify as an African American, okay? Because I know and have proof that I'm not African, all right? I am indigenous to this land, all right? I'm indigenous to this land, formerly known as Turtle Island, and that's what my paperwork says, all right? I identify as a Cherokee native, all right? A North American native of Cherokee descent. Now, that's what my paperwork says. What about y'all's? What about y'all's? Y'all are the African Americans, right? So anyway, let's go to this next report. Because I want those reparations too. Oh, hell no, I said I'm a light-skinned Negro, man. Not a light-skinned Negro. Then that makes me a dark-skinned Negro, beloved. All right. Which one you think is worth the most? Huh? The light skins or the dark skins? You know, we're going to talk about that on the spiritual channel maybe, because I was looking at some research where they were talking about how, you know, us darker skinned people, which we already know this, but it was just interesting to see the research, how us darker skinned people are, you know, much more stronger and powerful than the rest of y'all. Y'all light skins, okay? All right, is that why we have colorism in this country? From people who look like me? I'm just curious. Leon Gardner said, I'm black and I'm proud of it. I am too. All right, light skins versus the dark skins. Is that what y'all are on? Okay, let's continue. Y'all are something else. Let me share my screen. I love all y'all, honey. I don't care what skin tone you are. Okay? So with that all being said, now let's talk about, because did I play this already? How to remove your personal information. I don't think I played this. Now this is what G said about China not being afraid, okay? I know I already talked about the terrorists, but I don't think I played this particular video. Or maybe I did. Y'all stop me if I already did, honey. I got so many receipts, I'm losing track at this point. Okay, Evelyn said, Queen, you are too funny. Thank you. Juju B said, I'm a dark-skinned Negro. Oh, hell no, said, I beg your finest pardon. Listen to Queen Sam admitting to colorism. Queen Sam said, we used to pick on my dark-skinned sister. Recently, I apologized to her. See how low down you were, Queen Sam? This is what I'm talking about. I had to go through the same ridicule as a child, honey, but it didn't make me any never mind because I knew that my black was beautiful, okay? Please pay attention. As a matter of fact, do you all remember that story I told you all about how years ago, back in 2020, when me and my friends went to Cancun, Mexico, before we even took flights, I went to the tanning bed and got a tan. And when I walked in there, the white lady was like, you're getting a tan? And I said, yeah. And then I said, because I'm going to Mexico and I want to be extra dark. And she was like, but you're already dark. I said, yeah, I want to be even darker. And she said, well, what do you want me to put the setting on? I said, turbo. Okay, I want to be as black as I can get. Honey, that lady couldn't believe it. I guess she's so used to seeing the self-hating Negroes who don't love their melanin, but I've always embraced and loved my melanin, honey, okay? So y'all can sit down somewhere. In fact, I wish that I were at least 2 shades darker. Okay, then I'd be popping. Now let's get to these receipts. Like so, everyone, please like and share.
Digging in, Americans are waking up to a whole new escalation in the global trade war. Beijing is hiking its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods today from 84% to 125%. And for the first time since this all started, we're actually hearing from the Chinese President Xi Jinping himself. Xi's saying that his nation is, quote unquote, not afraid, and also warning, quote, there are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation. This after President Trump raised tariffs on Chinese goods even higher, 145% now, as we're all trying to keep track. The White House says they're waiting for China to pick up the phone. China says essentially the same thing about the United States. This very clearly showing what a tit for tat looks like, sending markets tumbling Thursday. But President Trump still optimistic when meeting with his cabinet.
We think we're in very good shape. We think we're doing very well. Again, there'll be a transition cost, and transition problems, but in the end, it's
Okay, we already heard him talking about the transition issues they were going to have or whatever. Songwriter Sonny says, I'm only light-skinned when people look at me. Okay, sit down somewhere. Only when people look at you. Now, let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then we'll go to Michelle Obama. Now, Michelle's is pretty boring as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when she's talking, it's usually boring to me. But, you know, just in case some of y'all care what her and Barack got going on, honey, you know her and her brother started a podcast. That also is equally boring. But, you know, just for those of you who want to know what's going on with them, I'm going to play that for you. And you can thank me later, I mean, if you like it. But I was just like, Michelle, nobody really cares at this point. Okay? Because she's supposed to address the divorce rumors that some of y'all have been talking about. Okay, so now watch this. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene running her mouth as usual. I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
So I want to ask you both about the phrase well-regulated militia that appears in the Second Amendment. In the Heller decision, Justice Scalia said that there is an individual right to carry a gun. The liberals lost that case, arguing that it was only for people who are actively participating in the militia, which we would call the National Guard today. But in order for there to be the availability of self-defense for people and the ability of people to participate in hunting and recreation, which is traditional, people have an individual right. Do you believe, Mr. Scott, that the Second Amendment gives people the right to be in private armed militias against the government, or do you believe that a well-regulated militia means that the government, and specifically Congress in Article 1, Section 8, has the power to regulate the militia?
Well, I think what was thought of back then was something akin to the National Guard. The state has a well-regulated militia, and those words are in the Constitution. It also talks to the people's right, which tends to suggest a collective right, not a person's right to bear arms. I agree with Justice Warren Berger, who said that the idea that this is an individual right has been a fraud upon the people.
Ms. Greene, what about you? Do you think the Second Amendment right protects the right of private armed militias to operate outside of state or federal control?
I believe the Second Amendment gives the states the right to have a militia, and it did not expand which way that went, but it gives the state that right. And I think it's extremely important. And I just want to clarify, Mr. Raskins, I never said arm every single person. People have the right to keep and bear arms if they choose. And I also feel that, if my children are in school and a madman with a gun comes to a school to kill people, unfortunately, a psychologist is not going to be able to just talk him out of it. That is not a good way to protect kids. But again, we enjoy...
Do you think the students should be armed?
I think children should be trained with firearms. I definitely do. I think that's very important so that they...
Now, is this idiot about to say that kids in school need to be armed with weapons in case somebody comes into school with a gun? Where is this going? I haven't watched it. I'm just curious.
Understand the
So they could repel someone who comes in.
That's not what I said. I said I believe children should be trained with firearms so they understand how to use them and understand the safety. But I think that we should allow states to choose how they protect schools. I believe more in state rights and a lot less than federal intervention.
I want to be clear about your position. There are 50 states that now ban private militias on the theory that people don't have a right to take up arms against the government. You agree with that?
Mr. Raskins, I believe we're talking about due process rights. I'm not sure how we're onto this about private...
We're talking about the Second Amendment.
Yes, we're talking about the Second Amendment. That's right. I think
you mentioned abortion a moment ago, but if we could stick to guns for a second.
Well, abortion kills babies, innocent. We're talking about kids being killed.
Okay, good.
Abortion kills innocent children.
All right, I got
that
your...
can't protect themselves at all from this horrific procedure.
Sounds like you want to arm them. But in any event, my question is about militias.
That's impossible, Mr. Raskins.
But I wanted to talk about militias. Do you agree that it's constitutional for the 50 states to ban private militias?
I don't think they should be banned. Or the federal government isn't protecting our border. We're being invaded every single day by an unknown amount of people coming illegally across our border. I think we're in a time where states have the rights to be able to figure out how to protect their citizens.
Right. So here's what the states have figured out, Ms. Green. They've figured out that private groups who are armed should not be taking up arms against the government and have no Second Amendment right against the state. So you agree with that?
I think the Second Amendment is clear. It means that we need well-armed citizens. And
Okay.
I believe that's extremely important, Mr. Raskins. And as weird as this body or the Senate perhaps is trying to violate the Second Amendment, but yet the Supreme Court just ruled yesterday that Americans need to be able to keep and
Yeah.
bear arms, carry them.
Handguns.
Bear
and
them
concealed
means
carry.
carry them.
Okay.
Carry them in order to protect
Ms.
themselves.
Green, but I just found something that said, you're quoted as saying in talking to Real America's Voice that whereas January 6th was just a riot at the Capitol, and if you think what our Declaration of Independence says, it says to overthrow tyrants. So do you think that the assault on the Capitol was a legitimate exercise of popular insurrection?
Oh, Mr. Raskins, I know it's early in the morning, but this is the Rules Committee. This isn't your Trump derangement committee that you call the January 6th committee.
Hey, gorgeous. Are you looking for a single guy in your area? Check out AYI and check out tons.
My last name doesn't have an S on it, Ms.
Oh,
Green.
I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Raskin.
Okay, you've been talking about the Second Amendment. You came here to talk to us about the Second Amendment, right?
I'm here to talk
And so-
about due process rights and protecting Americans'
Okay.
due process rights.
All
yes.
right, so I just want to be clear. You've been quoted at least as saying that the January 6th riot at the Capitol was in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which says you can overthrow tyrants. You've also testified that people have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to go. So it seems to me that lots of people were armed on that day, but the logic of your argument is that everybody could have been armed and brought their weapons with them. And I'll take that as a conclusion.
What evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed that day?
Oh,
Mr. Raskin, do you have that to introduce into the record?
Just wait for it, but when it comes out, presumably you'll be supporting it, right? That they would have a right to have guns and knives with them, is that right?
Mr. Raskin.
Is that your position?
No, Mr. Raskin.
Well, no, I'm going to
again,
ask
I
the
think-
questions here because this
I
is
think-
the
I
Rules
think
Committee.
you've-
You're not a member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Green. Are you?
I'm a
Are you a
witness.
member of the Rules Committee?
I'm a witness here at the Rules
Okay, so
Committee.
let me just ask you a
That
question.
is talking about due process rights, not your lies about January 6th, about President Trump and others.
Okay, I never mentioned him. You've brought him up. All right, I think your position has become clear. You think the Declaration of Independence says overthrow tyrants, that endows the people.
That's
What's
not.
a quote from you?
No, you're twisting words in an article.
Well, tell us what is your position
I'm
on it.
used to that.
I just ask that we not talk over each other because our court reporter, the stenographer here is having a difficult time.
Mr. Scott, let me just ask you, and then we can close this, because I think I've gotten everything I need to get, but what's your position on it? Do you think that people have a constitutional right or a right under the Declaration of Independence to attack the government with any kind of weapon?
No, and let me clarify. You asked me my opinion on the Second Amendment. Obviously, my opinion is not consistent with recent Supreme Court decisions. The majority of the court is disagreed, and we got to go with what the Supreme Court. We have to respect the court, and they are working out what the individual right is. And they have said in the Heller decision that there are limitations. Yesterday, they indicated that the limitation that New York had was too much. So we're still trying to figure out what the individual right is. As I indicated, I think a plain reading of the Second Amendment is inconsistent with those decisions, but the decisions are what they are. And, you know, our system is the Supreme Court is the law of the land.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, the Constitution gives Congress the right to regulate, arm, fund, organize, discipline the militias. 50 states have banned private militias. There is no right for people to take up arms against the government. And I think we need to put down this insurrectionist interpretation of the Second Amendment that's out there. Justice Scalia has made it very clear that the Second Amendment permits reasonable regulations in the interest of public safety and public security. And this legislation advances, however modestly, that goal of making us all safer. And I yield back to you.
Ms. Fishbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So some of you agree with her and some of you don't. At the end of the day, I just love to see them going at it, okay? I just love it. All right. So, and here's the thing. When they talk about these independent militias, private militias and all of that, well, you know, they're only concerned about those people coming after them, like those rioters who went to the Capitol January the 6th. But at the end of the day, they always deputize these people who don't look like us. Okay, that's what they do. They deputize them. And when these militias get out of pocket, whatever happens to them. Do you all remember some years ago when those white men who were in a militia, they were in Utah, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. And they took over this building. There was like 150 of them. Do you all remember that? How many of you all remember that? They took over a federal building. At a reserve, if I'm not mistaken. It was in 2016. A small group of armed anti-federalists occupied the headquarters of the Mulhar National Wildlife Refuge in Burns, Oregon, January 3rd of 2016. Okay, do y'all remember that? All right, there was a bunch of people who looked like them. And I don't think they went to jail. There was no sign of law enforcement near the entrance to the refuge, though an Oregon State Police Patrol car idled by the side of the road just outside Burns. We're not hurting anybody or damaging any property. We would expect that they understand that we have given them no reason to use lethal force upon us or any other force. That's what one of the leaders said, who called himself Bundy. Okay, so I'm sorry. They let those people do what the hell they want to do as far as I'm concerned until it's something pertaining to them. All right. That's what they do. Hold on. Let me see something real quick. Likes up, everyone. Please like and share. Or maybe they did go to jail. Let me see real quick. I don't know. I have to further look into it, but I don't think anything seriously happened to them. I don't think they had any serious consequences, as I recall. But like I said, they let these people do all kinds of nefarious things until it comes to them turning on them. Okay, Wavy those said they were just good people, Queen, LOL. You already know, right? Meanwhile, Rahim Olugbala, I think that was his name. Remember the black guy who was arrested? He was the first person arrested and charged as being BEI, which is a black identity extremist. Okay, the feds had him arrested, him and his 16-year-old son. He spent 6 months in prison. Didn't even have a trial. Just sent him to prison for 6 months while they tried to chalk up some charges on him. Wasn't even charged with anything. Simply arrested for a Facebook post where he was training other black people how to use weapons, okay? How to use weapons like AR-15s and whatnot. Training them. He posted a training video. Didn't make any threats, wasn't doing anything nefarious, but because they looked like a militia, okay? And maybe they were. But at the end of the day, they let the white folk have militias all the time. All right, and all he was doing was training them in how to protect and defend themselves, but he was arrested. SWAT team showed up, I think it was 3 o'clock or 2 or 3 in the morning, kicking in doors, ordering and demanding him and his adopted 16-year-old son outside. Sent that man to prison. So that's how they get down, so they can miss me with it. Okay? Queen Sam said, I remember that story, Queen. Exactly, all right? And so that was just like 5 or 6, maybe 7 at the most years ago. All right, so now let's hear what Michelle Obama has to say. And then I'm out of here. I'm out of here after this. Everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance. Now, because this is Entertainment Tonight, not a regular news source, I'm going to put an overlay over this so we don't have any troubles with copyright. Okay, here we go.
Your social life looks like right now?
Man, it is whatever I want, Sophia. It's whatever I want. It's me focusing on being the best me that I can be.
Michelle Obama breaking her silence on speculation she and husband Barack are on the outs.
Our lives are not that exciting.
The former First Lady directly addressing split rumors with Sophia Bush on her podcast Work in Progress, admitting that her newfound independence after a life of public service is probably why people are talking.
I have to make sure the girls are okay, or my husband's president, so I can't do that. What am I doing? You know, who am I doing this for? Who do I want to have a lunch with? How long do I want to stay in a place? Do I want to travel? If a girlfriend calls and says, let's go here, I can say yes, I can.
Yeah. I love it for you so much.
In my life that all of my choices are for me.
Yeah, after 8 years in the White House and raising 2 girls, Michelle is doing her own thing. Today, she has her own successful podcast and production company with Barack. And she continues to champion certain causes and campaigns when she can. But when she skipped both President Carter's memorial and Donald Trump's inauguration in January, fans of the famous couple became concerned.
This couldn't be a grown woman just making a set of decisions for herself, right?
Right.
That's the thing that we, as women, I think we struggle with, like disappointing people. I mean, so much so that this year people were, they couldn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing.
Last week, Barack did make this shocking marriage confession during a conversation at Hamilton College.
I was in a deep deficit with my wife, so I have been trying to dig myself out of that hole by doing occasionally fun things.
Yeah, after 32 years of marriage, they're still working on it and slowing down to find more me time and time for each other.
I can't blame my decisions and indecisions on anyone other than me. I think if I'm honest with myself, I could have made a lot of these decisions years ago, but I didn't give myself that freedom.
E.T. sat down with the couple in 2012 and talked romance right after he won his second term.
I suspect we're like a lot of couples who've been married for 20 years and who've got kids, which is that the love deepens.
He's getting poetic.
Turn
around.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
It's steadier. It has a lot fewer lows, and the highs that you get really have to do with knowing the life you've built together. And she's better looking than when I met her. So, and it's true.
And it's on
you can look at the pictures. She was fine then and finer now. So so I haven't lost any ardor for my wife.
Okay, that's enough.
I'd rather have somebody who was ready to do some hard things with me, but that meant I also had to be ready to do some hard things with him.
My job, I think, is just to reinforce all the hard work he's already put in, and we always remind each other what's at stake, why we're doing this. If we keep our eyes on that prize, then Barack is always doing exactly what he needs to do.
All right, so y'all heard it. Still boring as far as I'm concerned, okay? Good luck on the podcast, though. Funny how everybody wants to be on ScrewTube these days. Make it all make sense. Okay, so that all being said, that Crazy Rich Air said Michelle's a beard. Okay, some of y'all may not know what a beard is, but that's when somebody marries somebody when they're really undercover on the DL and they marry someone to keep up the roots as if they're not. Okay, Queen Sam said, well, at least she's keeping those edges with all those braids. Fat Boo said, Joan Rivers said it. Y'all are something else. Anyway, see how she told him, okay, that's enough, because she already knew that he was just laying it on thick. Okay, Barack, please sit down. We know what you're really like. All right, in my opinion. Now, mind you, after they left the White House, I was about to say the first time, but it was only once. No, it was twice. But after they left the White House the second time. Ha! Queen Sam called it a lavender relationship. That is the new terminology, okay? But with that all being said, and Nelson G said this new administration has a lot of beards. Y'all are a songwriter Sonny said Michelle is Wayne Brady. I'm through. Nicole said Barack is cute though. Oh yeah, he's smooth and all that. But anyway, I digress. Okay, now y'all made me forget what I was about to say about this. But that is so hilarious. And you know, the interesting thing I find is that people who don't look like me, when I'm out and about, or specifically if I'm in a corporate facility or whatever, in a building or whatever, for seminars, conferences, or whatever, these people always tell me that I look like Michelle Obama. And I'm like, no, I don't. Thank you kindly, but the Queen don't look nothing like Michelle Obama, honey. I don't know why people be saying it. But anyway, I digress. So hopefully my thought will come back, because I was going to tell y'all something. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The second time they left office, 30 days after, allegedly, we saw the pictures, but I'm going to still say allegedly, Barack, thank you. Y'all said no, you don't. Thank you, okay? The only person that I really think that looks like me or that I look like is Teresa Randall, okay? But here's the thing. After they left the second time, it was about 30 days later when Barack, or for 30 days, Barack supposedly went on vacation, not with Michelle, with some older Caucasian man. Now, I'm sorry, but who's going on vacation for 30 whole days, 30, with a dude when you have a whole wife at home? But I'm sorry, make it all make sense. Okay? I'm sorry. Fat Boo said they lied. You look nothing like her. I mean, you know, some of them think we all look alike, so maybe that's where it comes from. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Above all that, Drum said, Queen, you look way better than her. Thank you. I hope so. Now, I'm not saying she ain't cute and all, but I'm just saying. Okay, so with that all being said, Aqua Girl Right said, facts, Queen, she's beautiful too. All right, thank you, beloved. Now, with that all being said, let me go back and close out with this video of the Central Park 5 so we can see them shining, okay? Because, you know, let's not forget. Let me pull it up. Oh, I'm so glad I went here, because something I wanted to show y'all. This is witchcraft, clearly. I'm going to show y'all some witchcraft in a minute, okay? That's Trump right there. Look at him. All right, he had these little ads out and all that. It's low down nefarious stuff. I think Trump just doesn't want to see them shining. And I think Trump was further upset when he found out they got all that money from the state. All right?
A federal judge on Thursday denied a request by President Donald Trump to dismiss a lawsuit brought by the Central Park 5. The lawsuit accuses Trump of making defamatory statements about the 5 black and Hispanic men who were wrongly convicted and imprisoned for the 1989 rape of a white jogger in New York.
Look at Al Sharpton, you all. Look at Al Sharpton's bobblehead behind. Always taking an opportunity to get a photo op and clout chase. And by the way, I'm going to show you all a video about him after this, okay?
Central Park. The judge ruled that the 5 men had presented enough evidence, for now, to pursue their lawsuit accusing Trump of defaming them in comments he made during the 2024 presidential campaign. The plaintiffs, Yusef Salaam, Raymond Santana, Kevin Richardson, Antron Brown, and Corey Wise, are seeking unspecified monetary damages for reputational and emotional harms, as well as punitive damages. The White House declined to comment.
You have people on both sides of that. They admitted their guilt. If you look at Linda Fairstein and if you look at some of the prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled that case. So we'll leave it at that.
Trump has drawn criticism in the past over his statements about the Central Park 5. After the jogger's assault, Trump spoke out about the case, and took out a full-page advertisement in several New York newspapers calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty. The men were cleared in 2002, based on new DNA evidence and another person's confession.
I'll tell you what, I'm so glad that Santana, the one amongst them named Santana, I'm so glad that he got a divorce from Delicious, from Flavor of Love, because Shani, she just wanted that man's money, period. She just wanted that man's money. She's a pass around from what I heard from very reliable sources. So anyway, Trump needs to sit down somewhere, okay? Because, and the thing that he does too, another thing that he does is that he brings up other people's argument into his own argument to try to justify his own bullcrap. Even Linda Fairstein and others said that the state should never have settled with him. Sit down somewhere. Like I said previously, of course she's going to say that. She's the one who maliciously prosecuted them, because that's exactly what it was. Okay, Trump, please have civil seats, sir. But speaking of Al Sharpton, let me show you all this. I've had this in queue for months and keep forgetting to show it to you all. Hold on.
I'm with the Department of Common Sense for real. If Al Sharpton had been around damn near since Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, marching with them, and he's still bringing marches and rallies together today for the same shit, what did he change? Why the fuck is he out there? He only come popping up whenever it's some shit dealing with some black and white shit that he can race us off of. This nigga has found the finesse, and he only finesse on this. He don't come out to the motherfucking marches or them candlelights for them kids. You don't see that nigga till the election year. He got y'all standing out there in front of motherfucking Target like jackasses. He got y'all motherfuckers campaigning against Costco like jackasses. Ask yourself, how the fuck did he get rich? What t-shirt he sold? What product did he have? Y'all don't ask simple ass fucking questions. And that's why you always constantly getting robbed by people like BLM and shit.
No lies detected, okay? No lies detected. Now, I want to show y'all this trick, because this is clearly witchcraft. Now, how many of you, one's in the chat, and we're about to be out of here in a second, but listen, how many of you, one's in the chat, if you have, his edge is gone and receding. Okay. Once in the chat, how you get rich from walking. Okay, I absolutely cannot. Okay, so with that all being said, back to what I was going to say. How many of you, once in the chats, if you've ever heard men say that women putting on makeup is witchcraft? Like if they've seen a woman with a bunch of makeup on and then see how she really looks, they'll say, oh, that's witchcraft. How many of you have seen that? One's in the chat if you have. And here's the thing. Some of them, Nicole said, your chat is nefarious, Queen. Honey, I told y'all it's the most nefarious chat on YouTube, and I love it. I'm here for it. Okay, I created these monsters. So here's the thing. Some of these women wear their makeup like drag queens. That's where they learned it from. I'm not even trying to be funny. Some of them have absolutely copied how the drag queens put on their makeup, and that's how they put theirs, like all this, you know, different shades and all this stuff. I don't even know how they do it, and I don't have time to be doing all of that. No shade if you do, but I'm just saying that's where they got it from. Okay, because women didn't used to wear their makeup like that back in the day. So with that being said, that Crazy Beach Aries said I was already nefarious queen. Yeah, I know you were in that Crazy Beach Aries. But, okay, so that all being said, right, it says supposed to accentuate your natural looks. Exactly, not just make you look totally different. Okay, because if I don't have makeup on or do, I still look like myself. Some of these people don't even look like themselves and take it off. So men have said that this is witchcraft. Well, I want to beg to differ because some of you men perform witchcraft of your own. Yes, you do. You see, men going and get groomed, where they go to get groomed, like at a bar, they go to the barbershop and get their new haircuts and their beards trimmed and all of that, and they look so much better. That is the equivalence of women putting on makeup. You just enhance yourself. But some of y'all men got whole wigs on. Y'all got whole weeds. Y'all get that stuff glued on. Y'all got the spray on stuff going on. Y'all doing witchcraft out here in these streets, and somebody had to say it. Now, but what I happen to have come across is the most vile form of witchcraft that y'all men are out here doing. And I want to share this with you ladies because you need to know what they're up to, ladies. They want to try to go in on us, but in fact, we must go in on them. Okay? We must go in on them. Queen Sam said, "Oh, bussy reek style." That crazy bitch Aries said, "Wig today." I want y'all to see this. Not hot hair rockers. Nelson G said wearing eyeliner. Claudette said beards too. Yes, they have fake beards that they wear, and so do some of these studs. Now, I've seen some of these studs going to the barbershops, getting their hair faded and, you know, lined up and everything, and then getting fake beards put on that look real upon first inspection. But upon further inspection, you can see the glue. But anyway, here's the gist of the matter. This is what I came across, and I said, oh, hell no. Look at this. Say what now? This is absolutely a magic trick. How could this ever have happened in a million years? This is, in fact, the same man. I'm sorry, but how did he go from looking like Ichabod Crane, okay, to looking like Aaron Pierre, aka Mustafa? These are not photoshopped. He went to Turkey and got plastic surgery, or got a nose job. And he got something else done too. I think he got his hairline pulled forward. Definitely got his hairline pulled forward. Got those hair plugs. Okay? Straight up witchcraft. I find it all nefarious. Okay, look at it again. Then he grew the little facial hair and all that. But are y'all kidding me, fellas? And then somebody wrote on there, "We aren't ugly, we're broke." Ha! Now y'all just ugly. Now y'all just ugly. That's how that works. You're just ugly. I'm joking. Woo! Ryder said how his eyes look less lazy. Okay, the classic one said so satanic. Fat Boo said he looks like sludge. Leon said an eye job too. His eyes look the same to me. Hold on, let me put it back up. His eyes do, no, you know what it is about his eyes? It looks like he's a little slimmer. It just looks to me like he lost a little weight and his face is thinner. That's all. And his face is thinner. That's just what that looks like to me. His eyes are shaped the same. They're slanted downward. Okay. And then it looks like he may have on a little eyeliner or a little mascara on there, honey. All right. That's what that looks like. He might be one of them hot boys that they call zesty. So maybe he put on a little eyeliner and mascara. I don't know, but he sure looks a whole heck of a lot better. Now, they said he went to Turkey and got all that done. They said he went to Turkey and got this all done. Jeff ATL said he's been bussified. Woo, okay. That nose, honey, he got that fixed real good. All right. TC Dan said allegedly. So, you know, I'm just saying, y'all just picture it. If you can go to Turkey, if he can go to Turkey and come back looking like that, I need y'all to donate so the queen can go to Turkey too, honey. Maybe by the time I get back, they'll have me looking like Janet Jackson or Diana Ross. That's straight up voodoo, okay? That is some kind of witchcraft as far as I'm concerned. All right, that is some sort of witchcraft. Roddy says, stay out of turkey, your organs might go missing. You already know. Okay, hold on. I saw somebody's comment I wanted to read. Fat Boo said that nose is the hook. All right. Truth Brown said, Queen don't need no work. Thank you, honey. You know I'm not Glimmer. I was just joking. Anything I need to fix, I'm working on it naturally, okay? Jeff ATL said, you're beautiful just the way you are, Queen. Thank you. You all are so sweet, but y'all know y'all be lying too. Y'all know. Nicole said he probably got a BBL too. Not a BBL. Roddy said, yeah, you're right, Queen. His face is thinner. Yes, okay? He got that face a little thinner, honey. He worked out. He probably said, hold on, honey. If I'm going to have this handsome face, I got to go to the gym. That's what it looks like you did, honey. Okay? Anyway, that's all I wanted to tell you all. I'm about to be up out of here. Everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance, okay? Today is Friday. It got here pretty fast, did it not? So anyway, with that all being said, we're going to be on the spiritual channel at 1:30. That's about an hour from now. Y'all know I might be a few minutes late, but if you follow the spiritual channel, please tune in because I'll be on there. So I'm going to come back later on this evening because I have some information on Diddy. I wanted to get this out first because it's much more important. But yeah, we're going to talk about Diddy later on, y'all. I wanted to get Gavin to come on here. I texted him and asked him if he could come on here because I wanted him to break down some of these legal docs, you know, because he can do it better than I can. But Gavin texted me back and said he's tired of Diddy, okay? He said he's tired of Mrs. Diddy. Isn't that what he said? Mrs. Diddy, okay? So anyway, I don't know if he's going to come on here or not, but I'll be back, all right, probably around 6 or 6:30. Okay, so spiritual channel at 1:30, back on here today between 6 and 6:30. If you don't get a notification, just stop by the channel and shout out to the replay gang. All right, so everybody enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. Peace.
With that gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece. This time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got